Hello everyone and welcome along to GT World Challenge Asia's Esports presented by Tarmac Works. My name is Ben Constanduros, alongside me Paul Jeffrey, and we're here for the effectively opening round, but it's the Charity Cup, an opportunity for our Asian drivers to get used to this fantastic simulator which is called Assetto Corsa Competizione. We've got two races of 1 hour coming up for you across the next couple of hours. Firstly, the real world drivers, and then the sim pros, of which Paul Jeffrey is one. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, Ben, and hello everybody on broadcast. Looking forward to this one. Suzuka is arguably one of the finest racetracks in the world. It's brilliant to see the Asian region coming into the SRO esports family, and I am fascinated to see how our pro drivers and later how our sim drivers get on in a challenging car, a challenging track combination. So yeah, it's going to be a great weekend of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Suzuka plays host both to this Charity Cup and then to the final race of the championship, which will span the whole of the winter here in Europe, I suppose. We will end our season at the end of December, with a race every couple of weeks. So plenty of opportunity for our drivers to do lots of practice in between the events and to really get themselves up to speed. Now, we've already seen a couple of esports competitions thanks to ACC and SRO. And as you just saw, we had an amazing 5 or 6 round championship across March, April and May with our World Challenge competitors. It was actually open to everybody who took part in SRO. And then we saw the Americas put on their own show. But it's time now for the Asian continue to do their stuff. And Paul, esports is such a huge thing in Asia. Here is the entry list for our real world drivers first. But it's such a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, esports is growing across the world. As you say, Asia's really been adopted by the drivers and the fans of competition. To bring SRO, to bring the GT World Challenge Europe, and to bring a simulation like Assetto Corsa Competizione into this space, hopefully will open up an opportunity for a lot of drivers that are maybe less well known in Europe and worldwide and put them on the big stage. We've seen quality racing across the board in all different championships that we've run so far. As you rightly say, the SRO Esports Series started in earnest last year for the GT World Challenge Championship. We've done the Pro, the Silver and the AMs already in Europe and the rest of the world. And this is a shot window. We've got some beautiful tracks. The real drivers that we're seeing up first race today. We've got some great names in there. Alex Young, people remember from the world of Formula One. We've got some incredibly successful drivers in the Asia region taking part. And it's always fascinating, Ben, to me, to see how real drivers get on in a virtual environment, to see if the skills crossover is there. And for me, that is fascinating from this first race. I cannot wait to see how that transpires.
We do have a couple of drivers in our field who are very experienced esports drivers and have been already participating in a lot of esports races, even though they're real world drivers. So you saw the entry list just now. Dan Wells is really the man that stands out for me. He's actually been constructing a lot of the machinery that these guys need at their house or in their offices to be able to compete in this race. So Dan from Hong Kong has a really good opportunity to not only show off his skills, but also show off his skills in front of the field, which he was usually raced with in SRO World Challenge Asia when and if they are able to get themselves racing in the real world. But he's an incredibly fierce competitor in the virtual world. And he is my tip, really, for one of those drivers that already has the experience to show that experience in the early running at Suzuka. But as we go through the whole of October and November and into December, the others will catch up. No thanks, probably, to him helping them out as well.
And that's the thing as well, just for the audience at home, to give you an idea of what we're getting into here. These are 60-minute races. So it's 60 minutes of track action, but there's also a mandatory pit stop. Outright speed, as in real racing, is incredibly important, but also there's racecraft, there's strategy in there. Our pit stop strategies are You don't have to do anything other than take 1 litre of fuel. The different tracks we visit have got different length pit lanes. Suzuka is an incredibly fast circuit, incredibly challenging on your tyres as well. It'll be really interesting, Ben, to me, to see if some of the drivers elect to put some fresh boots on during the course of the race, or if they go for the minimum time on pit road as possible and not cede track position. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that transpires. And as you say, Dan, very, very fast driver. But will strategy, will racing intelligence come into play as well? And of course, T1 at Suzuka, always a bit spicy with the 40 cars heading down to there off the green flag.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to see how the race plays out. Plenty of opportunities for us to talk about strategy and what we're going to do in terms of the pit stops. It's a new thing for this Asian series that we do have pit stops in the 60-minute races. And let's not forget that this race does not count towards the championship. This is the race, the Charity Cup, and therefore please head over to all of the SRO channels to donate some money to Save the Children. Our link is Save the Children Esports for today's races, and we are hoping to get some good money raised for today's action, and then the serious stuff and the championship will begin in earnest in a couple of weeks' time. So, Paul, as you mentioned before, we have a pit stop. We've got a 60-minute race. You don't need to pit. You've got enough capacity in your tank to do a full 60-minute race, so the tyres should last. So is there a performance benefit in doing it, or are you simply doing it for just going in and getting out as soon as possible?
And I think that, for me, is one of the big unanswered questions that we're going to see an answer for in the next 60 minutes' time. The track is incredibly... I am not going to commit myself. I'm going to sit firmly on that fence, I think. It's such a demanding track, demanding for the tyres. When you're carrying fuel on the car, you're braking, you're accelerating, you're turning that extra weight in the race car. You run less fuel. Theoretically, you can run faster lap times. You're putting less stress on the car. But of course, you come down pit road, you're stationary while other cars are circulating out on circuit. If you're a confident driver, if you're confident in your speed and your performance, you may want to run a little bit light, especially the guys at the front. Try and break away from the pack, get a gap and come back into it. But really, it's the first race, it's a one-off event. It's so difficult to answer that question. The track temperature's quite high, the circuit looks beautiful. I think we'll find out the answer, Ben. I'll come back to you in 62 minutes' time with an answer.
A quick look then at the front runners on our grid. Dan Wells in the Leopard Lamborghini in that black and yellow machine, alongside him Melvin Moe in the white and pink machine. And then we have Evan Chen in the Porsche behind. So 3 different marks in the top 3. It's a Mercedes for Matt Solomon in 4th position, Sean Thong in 5th, and then Dominic Ang in 6th spot. Daryl O'Young in 7th position for Craft Bamboo, and then Jaitong Alex Lang in 8th. Duveshen Padiachi in 9th position, and then Kang Ling in 10th spot. As you can see, different colours for the different numbers on our timing screen. White signifies our real pro drivers, and then red for our real AM drivers. And the best of that, Ichan An in 11th position, and Tarez Ao in 12th spot. And then we get to Adley Fong in 13th position. But just because they're really, really fast in the real world does not mean they are really, really fast in this virtual world. Great to see a diversity in vehicles as well, because we have, of course, to implement the BOP that would be seen in the real world too. And then the all-important getting this start right, Paul. Very, very important not to pick up a drive-through penalty straight away.
Yeah, I've got to avoid drive-through penalties, careful of track limits, give your rivals some space, and try and get the lead through the opening snake section. Incredibly difficult to pass in the first sector of this racetrack. You can clear that one, you've got fresh air, you've got maximum downforce, and you can start to pull a gap. Because Suzuka, a very quick circuit, a very hard circuit on which to overtake.
There's Adley Fong in the 555 Lamborghini, side by side. The cars are given boxes in which they have to stay in until the lights turn green. If they are not in that box when the green light goes, then they can instantly pick up a drive-through penalty. Very easy to do so. All the cars trying to get themselves in line now, way more tidy than you might see a real-world start. And this is a very slow one also from Dan Wells, who's leading the field towards the line. He's got the inside line for the first corner. And now we should go green and racing. A drive-through penalty further back for 20th position. Other than that, everybody has gone clean. And Dan has not got a very good start. And he has been swallowed up by the pack. Melvin Moe leads through turn 1. And then we've got Evan Chan coming around on the outside of Dan Wells, trying to get his Porsche into second position. I think Dan has recovered into second. He has now slotted in. And this S is all the way up here. It's not really where you want to go side by side. On board with Adley Fong, down in 13th at the moment. We've got a yellow flag flying further back, so somebody has come to grief. And Dan Wells now all over the back of Melvin Moe. Dan really should be the fastest man in this field. He's got lots of experience racing in esports and lots of experience in ACC. And as we spoke about a little bit earlier, he also sets up some of the equipment. Just wait for the timing screen to sort itself out, because there's a couple of glitches until it gets through the first of our timing loops. But Melvin Moe is holding on right now, not necessarily fast, but he's being careful on those cold tyres. And a spinner from Matt Solomon in 4th position. The Mercedes rotates.
Yeah, real shame for Solomon, exiting the hairpin, a little bit too heavy with the right foot, cold tyres, low tyre pressure, heavy fuel, very easy to do, but Solomon's going to plummet down the order now as Wells looks to the inside, makes contact with Moe, race leader, that spins the Mercedes around, and Dan Wells makes contact in the opening lap and loses out to Chen, so Wells now on the outside into 130R, there's nothing doing there. Wells is going to back off, get the slipstream for the chicane, looks to the inside, that's just a feint to try and put off Chen into the fastest corner on the racetrack. Wells drops back a little bit actually, Ben, so not attacking now, but that's an unfortunate move in the opening lap. 60 minutes, we've already got contact at the front of the field.
Unnecessary and clumsy from Dan Wells. He's clearly the fastest man on circuit, and you could see that he wanted to carry so much more speed through the spoon hairpin, but unfortunately Melvin was just in the way, and a little bit of contact in this game does actually have huge consequences. Now let's talk a little bit about how race stewarding works. We have Paul Jeffrey, we have track limits is one thing and contact is another, and it's managed in 2 different ways.
It is indeed. So we've got people watching the action. There are race stewards that will be looking for any infractions from the drivers. As you say, track limits, making contact. They'll be looking at that, reviewing it from the different angles. No doubt will speak to the drivers after the event as well. And they're making it. Actually, Dan Wells takes the race lead. So we've seen Chen, to interrupt myself for a moment, Chen runs wide at the final part of the stake. Dan Wells sees an open door, walks straight through it. Thank you very much. Evan Chen manages to keep the car well driven, actually, in the Porsche, roughly pointing in the right direction, and recovers to second. But for a race spectacle point of view, that has very much put points in the pocket of Dan Wells. He's going to use this opportunity now to try and run away from things in the Leopard Lamborghini, the yellow and black car that you see on screen now. So that was a gift. That was very much a gift there, Ben, for Dan Wells.
If you're looking out for big names like Alex Young and Daryl O'Young and Kevin C, all three in pit lane, either having attention to their cars, as Yuki Taniguchi gets himself a drive-through penalty. That will be for track limits, because they don't flash up that quickly when the human has to go through it. So Taniguchi, a very, very well-known name in the world of Asian motorsports, and also a very successful business owner, runs his own computer games company. So is at the moment the best of the AM drivers, but unfortunately will have a drive-through penalty, as does 21st place Rick Jung. He has to come and serve a drive-through penalty. That was from the start infringement, and unfortunately, as I say, 3 cars in the pits: Alex Young, Daryl Young, and Kevin C. Kevin C came into the pits that last time through, and it's not a routine in and out. They could do that. They could come into the pits and come straight back out again. They've chosen not to, as we go on board with 15th position Ichan An. And I think that's a challenge on Taniguchi. No, Taniguchi's come into the pits. Bit of contact, and that sent the Audi flying. Who is that? That must be Tang in 13th position. And I think An's going to get a penalty for that too. What do you say, Paul?
Yeah, that was, again, a little bit difficult. 2 cars converging on the same piece of tarmac. sadly doesn't go and managed to get away with that one quite nicely. So he runs in 6th position. But Tong in the Audi, you can see, as you mentioned earlier, the lightest amount of contact, the car's unsettled, the driver's balancing the brake, the downshift, the turning to try and get the maximum apex speed into the first part of the opening corner. And as they often say in Formula One, when the car is balanced on that finer level, you can almost reach out and push it and make it spin. And having thick end of a ton's worth of metal smack into the side of it at that speed, no wonder the Audi went to the inside of the circuit and should get away with it from a damage point of view, I would imagine. But yes, stewards are going to have to look at that one, I am absolutely sure, as we're looking at Nan Lin now in the AMG Mercedes. This is the car, remember, or this mark of car that set pole position in the Real World Series last season. So the Mercedes is a tidy car around the Suzuka International Circuit, and Nan Lin doing a good job to fend off the sole BMW of Takeda behind him. So Lin trying to retain a top 10 position, but that BMW, then fast car, very quick in a straight line as well.
Yeah, interesting to see how these different models across our season work, because we do have the balance of performance, and therefore we do see some cars work better at some circuits than others. See, the Mercedes seems to be a popular choice looking at the top 10 right now. Was that 5 inside the top 10, 6 inside the top 10, on board with Nan Ling in 11th position, looking to try and go around the outside of the BMW, and that would be the lead in Am if he didn't run too deep and too wide, and he's handed Takeda back the advantage. BMW is a big old machine, and they're going to try and run side by side through the S's, but it's not advisable. The racing line really does have a lot more grip than offline, and in fact Lin is going to lose out here to Poon, I think, as the two Mercedes run side by side. Lin heads hard into that apex, so to shut off the advances of David Poon, and yeah, David's bailed out of that. So interesting battle for the head of the Am field here, 10th position overall right now.
Yeah, that's a fantastic bit of racing, and it is worth mentioning, Ben, so it's very good to pick up on that one. This is the fight for the lead of the AM champion, the AM series. So we've got AM drivers and pro drivers taking part in this race. They're all looking for overall honours, but they also want to be the front of their own particular category. And one man who's at the front of the entire field is Dan Wells in the Lamborghini. The gap is just under a second. You can see how close the chasing Porsche of Chen is behind. Wells not pulling away as much as we anticipated at the start of this race. That could be a number of factors. Wells may not have the pace in the car at this stage. He may have set the car up to be stronger later in the event. He may be looking at saving tyres. Chen behind might be running less fuel and looking to make a pit stop. But what matters, what is important, we can second guess all we like. We've got to fight for the race lead, something I wouldn't have laid any money down at the beginning of this race. Dan Wells is a man under pressure, and these two are in a fight all on their own at the head of the field.
So drive-through penalty being handed out to two of our drivers. You can see on the timing screens, Thong has got a drive-through penalty, as has Lang, the 99 car. That's a stop and go for 10 seconds. So that means a lot more naughtiness going on than what we see from a drive-through penalty. And Thong taking his drive-through penalty straight away in the Audi. Now I wonder whether that was the Audi we saw cutting the grass. I can't remember which one that was now, but either way, he's come back out the circuit. He's served his he's not served his necessary pit stop because he's had to do that drive-through penalty. That does not count but he's also now got a stop and go for speeding the pit lane. So there's plenty of action going on in the penalties. I also saw Frank Yu in the pits and Kang Ling also in the pits. Kang Ling back out of the circuit, as is Rick Young. But Frank Yu looks like he may be having a very long pit stop and could also be out this race.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of sanctions being handed out by the game and the race stewards, so we'll keep our eye on them, see where the relevant people filter back out into the running order. And Dan Wells, while you were talking there, Ben, Wells was under significant pressure from this man, Evan Chen in the Porsche 911 RSR GT3. Wells looks incredibly uncomfortable in the first and second sector of this Suzuka circuit. That suggests that maybe Wells is carrying a little bit of aerodynamic damage from the early race incident when he take the race lead. The car just doesn't seem to be as compliant in the twisty parts, doesn't want to turn in as early as Wells wants it to, won't hold its line as strongly as it would have done in practice and qualification. The good news for Dan Wells and the bad news for Evan Chen is Wells is slow in parts of the racetrack where it's incredibly difficult to get too wide. So trying to find a Porsche-sized gap in this section that we're coming up to now, through turn 1, into turn 2, up into the famous snake section, it's almost exclusively one line for one race car. But look how much the Porsche closes up. The car, you can see the Lamborghini ahead. It's not turning in as well as it used to do in qualification at the start of this race. It's missing all the apexes. The car's pushing. By understeer, we mean the car is turning less than the driver is asking it to. It's wanting to push away from the ideal racing line. That's going to hurt Dan Wells' tyres as well as his lap time. And Evan Chen can smell an opportunity to get the race lead. The problem for Chen and the Porsche is Wells is still quick around the fast stuff at the back end of the lap. And sadly for the Porsche driver, that's where all the overtaking opportunities sit.
So could he come into the pits and get that car repaired? I mean, we don't necessarily see damage in ACC, but we certainly feel it quite heavily. If he came into the pits now, could he get it repaired and get back up to the pace that we know he actually had?
Yep, that option is absolutely open to the Lamborghini to get down pit road. The problem doing that is that will take additional pit stop time. So a repair on a car, a fairly minor repair on a car, can take anything up to 60 seconds. So 1 minute stationary in pit road while other drivers are circulating on the track. Wells will know he's got lap time in his pocket, but what he's got to do as a driver now is decide, is the trade-off between having potentially ultimately a faster race car worth losing track position, worth losing real estate to your rivals? I would argue potentially not. If I was Wells, I would think these two guys are running away at the front of the field. I would mirror what Chen does behind. If Chen comes down pit road and
Hello, everyone. We are back here. We've just had a technical issue. The race is still going on, and I've got it. I can see what's happening in my screen, but we've just got a little bit of connectivity issues going on with our cloud-based server. Everything, Paul, is being done remotely here to make sure that the servers run at optimum speed, bearing in mind that all the races are spread across the whole of Asia, and the production team over here in Europe, in Italy. I'm in France, you're in the UK. It always baffles me just how incredible much technology it takes to get these races together.
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I have the definition of a Luddite. I'm a northern Englishman in my 30s. Technology confuses and scares me. So to live in a world where I can see a picture of Ben Constanduros in a different country and talk to him is, to me, still incredible. And the fact that, like you say, Ben, we've got drivers from Malaysia, from Japan, from Australia, all literally thousands of miles away from where we are now, competing on an even footing on a racetrack. The broadcast pictures are being transferred around the world. We're communicating with race control in a different country. Where it's a phenomenal technical achievement. And to keep the ping, and for those of you, I apologise if I'm teaching you to suck eggs here, but ping is the way that the client communicates with the server, which in racing terms means keeping cars smooth. What your car is doing, other people can see the same thing. You're not flicking or rubber banding or twitching out on the circuit. To keep that level for 40 cars on a very highly graphically and physics intense simulation is a massively difficult challenge. And incredible, Ben, that we can still do that one, and we can still tune in as a broadcast team and talk and ramble over the top of it. So sadly, small technical issue, but I'm sure we'll get it resolved and we'll get back up and running in a non too distant future.
Good news is I can tell you've not missed anything. I've just got my half an eye on the race, and Dan Wells does still lead by a couple of tenths over Evan Chen. So once our broadcast team get that connection back, then we can go back to seeing how the race is looking. I mean, we talk a little bit about that connectivity, but breaking it down even further, you've got drivers sitting in simulators, putting inputs into a computer which controls a car, which is then also racing other cars at exactly the same time in different countries, all then sending their signals to another place where we select what to look at. We watch it, commentate over it, send all that data then to another place where you guys at home can watch it. So I'm, throughout the whole of lockdown, when this esports boom really for motorsport happened, it's constantly amazed me that that's even possible. Here are some more pictures then, and we're back up and running, which is fantastic to see. This is Ling down in 23rd position in the Lamborghini for Orange One FFF Racing. And he, I think, is one of the guys that has pitted right now. I can tell you the front of the field, we're about to start getting back markers. How? I presume because some of the drivers have taken pit stops. Not something that we actually have, we can see on the graphics, unfortunately. So we don't know exactly if people have taken pit stops or not. But ultimately, we have Dan Wells leading from Evan Chen, Padiachi in third, then Adley Fong actually up to fourth position now. Melvin Moe in fifth position after leading those first couple of corners, then spinning out. We saw Matt Solomon also spinning out at the first hairpin, and he sits in fifth position. So actually he's got ahead. So Solomon sixth, and then it's Dominic Ang in seventh spot. Then 13 seconds back is that BMW of Takeda. He is leading our AM section by 4 seconds now over Lin. Pun in 10th position overall, third in class. And actually not too many battles at the moment, nothing too tight on track right now. I see that the Audi of Sean Thong is trying to get past Ang in 11th position. And that is pretty much the closest battle on track, I think.
As we see a little bit of contact, that's a little bit too close for comfort. That's Sean Thong once again in the heart of controversy. Thong making contact with the back of Anne's Porsche, spinning Anne around, so Anne needs to get the car pointing in the right direction again. Probably a wise time to head down pit road, maybe get some new boots on that German machine. But Sean Thong didn't quite see the start up to that incident, so I'm not quite sure exactly how things transpired. But when we cut to the scenes, it looked like Thong, in good old-fashioned British touring car style, decided to tap the back of the car ahead and just spin him out of the way. So Sean Thong, as a result of that, is currently 11th place and 4th in the AM category running. So here we go. Ben, this is a bit of a fight.
Yeah, so
some back markers involved.
Yeah, so Dan Wells, second of the car, leading the race. And very well done from Al to get out of the way very cleanly there. So not too badly held up, Dan Wells. But he is, as you say, and has been surprisingly under so much pressure from Evan Chen. Chen really being able to keep up with him in the Porsche. The Porsche, a strong car, a very, very different car to the Lamborghini ahead. And as always, from our Italian colleagues, they've set it at the perfect time of day to get a beautiful sunset. Every single time we go racing, it always looks so stunning. This is ACC, Assetto Corsa Competizione. That's the platform that SRO gave their license to. And it's one of the newest simulations on the market. I think released, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, 2018. And it just always looks stunning.
Yeah, it's a fantastic simulation. It's the official title of the SRO GT World Challenge, and the many different platforms that sit underneath that one. As you say, we're in the Asia Series at the moment. We're giving a shot window to the Asia region drivers, both professional, amateur and sim racers. And somebody who's absolutely blown me away in the first 20 minutes of racing is this man, Evan Chen, to keep hold of the back of that Lamborghini. In fact, at this stage in the motor race, to look like the faster of the two cars is fantastic performance from Chen. He's racing a Porsche. As you say, it's a very different car than the Lamborghini. It's a bit of a... You have to be a bit of a Porsche specialist. It's not the type of GT3 car that you can just jump in and be quick straight away. You've got to understand what it can do, the way it behaves and reacts very, very differently to other cars on this GT3 platform. And Evan Chen at the moment is making it sing in comparison to that Lamborghini. I'm glad that these pictures have returned while this fight is still very much in the throes. And as we saw earlier, Dan Wells is now going to contend with traffic. There are cars that are on different pit strategies that will be further down the running order than their performance necessarily deserves. So it's not going to be straightforward overtaking slower cars on this track. Of course, like in real motor racing, we have blue flags. People will have to concede the track position to the faster car behind. But it's finding that balance, isn't it, Ben, of letting the leaders pass. As we see Evan Chen losing the rear of the car into the first spoon, manages to catch it very nicely indeed, but he has given away a bucket load of time to Dan Wells ahead.
Now, I'm curious to see whether Chen can reel him back in. We know that he can equal the pace of Dan Wells, but do we know if he can go faster? Just looking at the last lap times, all the top competitors are about 2:02.2s. Anybody kind of there's a few that are in the 4s and the 5s. But now Evan Chen is not tucked underneath the Lamborghini's rear wing. Is he now able to go faster than Dan Wells? We won't know this lap because, of course, he's just made that mistake. But give it one more lap and maybe we'll see Chen reeling back in. Remember the gap, just over 2 seconds as they cross the line after 11 laps of racing.
Yeah, that's an absolutely outstanding point, actually. We suggested that Chen is maybe the quicker of the two cars at this moment in time. Now we'll get to see that when he gets bulked a little bit in the second part of the opening turn, but he should be okay. The Mercedes behind actually has now put himself under pressure from a car that he's racing against for track position, but Evan Chen has got 2 seconds to find to the car ahead, and almost immediately, Ben, in the first part of the stake, he's making that time up hand over fist. This Porsche is on fire compared to the potentially battle-scarred Lamborghini ahead.
So, knowing that he's got the extra pace, because look, as you say, he's taken half a second out in the first sector alone and another half second into the second sector, so the gap's down by half in just half a lap. Knowing that he's got that pace, he really needs to make it stick. He needs to make that pass happen, or go into the pits and give himself an opportunity to find some clear track without Dan Wells ahead, because right now sitting behind him is not helping him at all.
I totally agree. For me, this is very, very clear. Evan Chen needs to jump down pit road, get that stop taken, the mandatory stop, don't forget, where you've got to come down pit road and take at least 1 litre of fuel. Whatever his strategy is now, get in pit road, throw the strategy out the window, get down pit lane, serve that time that you need to serve on pit road, and push for all you're worth. Perform the undercut where you can go ultimately quicker than the car ahead. By the time Wells has reacted, he's further up the road at the moment, so he'll not be able to pit to cover off Chen should he decide to come down pit road. You can use that time, put in the fast laps. By the time Wells comes out of pit lane, you would have cleared him without needing to take the risk of making an on-track overtake.
And interesting to see that in the second half of the lap, he's equal to Dan. So as you were saying, it's the first half of the lap where Dan Wells is really worried and struggling. The second half of the lap, he does seem to have the measure and the pace of the Porsche behind him. So really different, obviously different characteristics to the track, with lots of corners in the first half and a bit more open and straight line in the second half of the lap around Suzuka. But really interesting to see that. And as you said, in the first part of the lap, you can't overtake, but he's a lot faster. In the second half of the lap, he's equal, where you really is the only overtaking opportunities, unless you are really kind of bullish and touring car-esque. So he really needs to think about that as we switch our attention a bit further back to our man in 15th position, who looks to be going very, very slowly. There seems to be a few little battles going on here. BMW into the pits. Now that is a decision being made by Takeda, our leader in the AM category, to come in now with 35 minutes still remaining. Now, Paul, are we going to have a chance to even work out what kind of what he's doing to a car?
This will be more luck than judgment, I think, if we manage to work out exactly what is happening in terms of fuel and tyres. The car will be sat stationary for around 30 seconds should you take fuel and tyres. That's the average pit stop time in ACC for a car that's taking on a change at pit road. Longer than that if you're repairing damage. But Takeda, as you say, is race leader for the AM category at this moment in time. He's got a fast race car. 60 minutes on an endurance set of tyres should be absolutely fine for the car to see through to the checkered flag. Fuel will be marginal, but should be able to make it without filling up. So for me, as a driver, I would want, personally, to serve the least time humanly possible down pit road. As Melvin Moe now makes a move on Adelaide Thong. Thong, I believe, ran a little bit wide coming up to the, I think it's the Spoon section. No, Spoon. Ran a little bit wide at the second part of that one. That opened the door for Melvin Moe. Mercedes manages to get the overlap. Doesn't need to make too difficult an overtake, just powering down the start-finish straight. And that has opened up some clear racetrack to the Craft Bamboo Racing AMG Mercedes of Melvin Moe. The car that you see on screen now, the very attractively liveried white, pink and black Mercedes, now takes track position.
I tell you what, that was a long stop for Takeda. He's only just leaving pit lane now. There he is. And so I would say that was almost a full service for him, which would explain a little bit as to how he was at the head of the AM field and with such strong pace. We really don't know how these cars started the race, what tyres we know they all started on good tyres. We don't know how much fuel they started on. We don't really know when they've come into the pits how much fuel they've taken on afterwards. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but ultimately when we get to the end of the race, we can work it all out. So on board with David Punn in 10th position, another of the Craft Bamboo cars in the slipstream of a Lamborghini, which is at least one lap down. I think that was Ling, wasn't it? Down in 19th position that he was passing. As you can see from the accurate graphics on these cars, top left-hand side of the windscreen tells you the name of the driver and the car's position in the race. And so indeed, that was the 24 car being passed. But actually, Ling is holding on to him right now.
Yeah, that's the danger of when you've got cars on different strategies, different speed. Ling's making quite a hash of this, actually. He's already overtaken prior to the chicane, which required David Punn to make a secondary overtake on the lap car. And I think Ling's taken himself out of contention now round the gravel, probably headed straight to the scene of the accident. So Ling, lap traffic, got more speed than the cars ahead of him and making a bit of a nuisance of himself. And David Punn will be very grateful to see that Lamborghini turning itself into a lawnmower and going out wide and having a nice day at the beach, in the gravel, at the exit of the State Corner. Is put now under pressure. Great overtaking move from Jan Tongbeg up the inside of the hairpin. Really last minute overtaking manoeuvre, last minute braking manoeuvre, and the Mercedes of Lang has now passed David Punn. So great move there, Ben. You've not seen one like that for a long time. Very Kamui Kobayashi-esque.
David Punn seems to feel like he's doing a rallycross race right now. He's spent most of the lap off track, and of course that will dirty his tyres. He will feel a lack of grip from that as well. remember, we are in a simulation here. We keep talking about things that are so obvious in real life, but I want to emphasize that also happens in this platform as well. There are obviously games out there that wouldn't necessarily simulate tire degradation and fuel degradation, but this one very much does. And so Pun will be struggling with that car for the next couple of laps, and he's lost some positions. Well, actually, he hasn't really lost that many positions because the guys that passed him, I think, are all lapped down. So those two Craft Bamboo cars ahead, he hasn't lost that much. Back to the battle at the front of the field then. Chen is caught back up with Dan Wells, and once again he's sitting under the rear wing. You can see Melvin Moe now in third position, and that is because Duvashen Padiachi came into the pits but is already back out onto circuit as well. So he actually did very little in terms of servicing his car.
Yeah, and this is the strategy that we spoke about at the top of the broadcast, starting to play out now. We're really interesting. Track position now, with 29 minutes and 52 seconds left on the clock, is one thing, but what state will the cars be in at the end of the lap? Evan Chen is the closest I've seen him to Dan Wells at this stage of the lap. Evan Chen now really finding some time in the traffic. Traffic is an incredibly important part of an endurance driver's management skill set. Dan Wells, we know he's probably struggling a little bit with his car. Evan Chen is as close as he's been for a long time, looking to the inside in turn one. Wells knows what's happening, closing down to the inside wall. Chen decides not to give it up, looks to the inside. He knows he's quicker at this part of the racetrack. Very minimal braking, keeps the car nice and tight, gives racing room to the Lamborghini. And Evan Chen overtakes into the first corner. Fantastic move by the Porsche driver. Clears the Lamborghini. The Lamborghini shows his nose. Up the inside, makes contact. Chen's round on the outside. Will he be in the inside wall? No, he won't. Dan Wells, what are you doing, Sunshine? That was very untidy. And Evan Chen facing the wrong way.
A second slightly clumsy move from Dan Wells. So many times we've seen it. He is the fastest man on the track. He is definitely carrying more speed through the apex of the corners, and he just carried that speed into the rear bumper of Evan Chen. Shouldn't be struggling too much for damage. What's going on here? Everyone seems to be parking on the exit of the chicane. Oh, that Audi's going very slowly, and a big clunk from Lin before he dives into the pits. He'll be able to get that damage repaired. Wells has now got a 7-second advantage over Chen, his second discretion. I don't know where we have if we have any human race control, or we might have a subsequent race control post-race. Sometimes in these races we have judgments there and then, and other times we have to wait. So we do have human race control live, I'm being told by the organisation. So they'll be looking at both of Dan Wells' little indiscretions and trying to work out whether he deserves a penalty. Better to do it now, Dan, than to do it when you're actually in the championship. Just a reminder, you're watching the Charity Cup for the GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship. This is the opening round, although it doesn't count towards the championship because it is simply kind of a warm-up for all these drivers to get used to the platform, get used to racing, which is very different to the real world when you're racing on a simulator like this. And now Dan Wells comes in for his mandatory pit stop. Everyone has to visit the pits once during the race. You can't do that during taking a penalty, and just look how many cars have decided to do the same thing at the same time. They've divided this race in half, and we've got about half a dozen cars in pits. Padiachi has already pitted. He didn't do a lot in terms of servicing his car, so let's see where he comes out in comparison to Dan Wells, and let's see how much Dan Wells does to his car in general.
Yeah, Padiachi is the man to watch now. As you say, he's already been down pit road, so he's fighting for genuine track position. Dan Wells has made the right move, jumped down pit lane while there's a 7+ second gap to the damaged Chen. Wells doing absolute minimum, so he's not repairing the car. Oh,
he's got a stop and go penalty.
Goes from bad to worse.
And I think it looked very automatic to me, so that for me would be a speeding in the pit lane infringement.
Yeah.
And we saw Taniguchi have one a little bit earlier. And so unless that was a very quick reaction from our race directors, I haven't seen any notifications to suggest it so. Dan Wells gets a 30-second stop-go. You can see Sean Thong at the bottom of the screen. He's been disqualified, and that will be down to not taking his drive-through penalty within 3 laps, as you are obliged to do. And so Padiachi actually, at the moment, 42 seconds behind Dan Wells. That didn't go very well in terms of pit stops between those two. Maybe that will change at the next timing point. But Chen has a healthy advantage now over Ling as we watch Pun and I think this is Ao going... No, this is Lin, isn't it? Lin putting Pun under pressure for 8th spot.
Yeah, that hairpin has proven to be very much the undoing of David Pun at this stage. So Lin dives down the inside, should I say. David Pun trying to find his way around the outside of the spoon. There's not a good place to be. There's marbles on the extra circuit. Letting up a lot less grip than the racing line. David Pun does well to recover the car without losing too much time, but unfortunately for the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes driver, he's going backwards at an alarming rate of knots. I don't believe this car has been down pit road. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, Ben. So maybe tyres are starting to give up, drivers starting to lose a little bit of their concentration. Could be a good time to do a quick service. But going back to Dan Wells for a minute, definitely will be a stop and go penalty for pit lane speeding infringement. That's either not getting the car down to the mandated speed at the pit line at the beginning of pit road, or releasing the limiter a little bit too early when coming out of his pit box and just breaking that all-important speed limit. 30 seconds stop and go is an incredibly harsh penalty for that infraction. It's 30 seconds stopped, but you've also got to get down pit road and back out again. So total loss time, you're looking at about a 50-second to 1 minute total loss on top of the pit stop already. So Dan Wells has thrown himself out of contention and absolutely opened up the race for Evan Chen, who's currently leading, having not stopped the car just yet.
Interesting to see how far Melvin Moe and Adley Fong have fallen down after their pit stops. They must have decided to do a full service on those cars. 15th and 18th at the moment. Leona Chin in 16th, the only female racer in our real world field. We've got a couple of female racers coming up in the sim race that comes up after this. The very best sim drivers from Asia battling it out on Assetto Corsa with the same kind of spec, same kind of rules. But Leona Chin's the only female racer in this one. She's also owing us a stop-go 30-second penalty and therefore will fall out of 16th spot. But Fong and Mo well down, considering they were in the top 5 before the pit stops. So something going on there. Here is Leona Chin, and she is tucked up behind the BMW, which is 1 lap ahead of Takeda. Takeda 4th now. And as you say, I think the 3 guys ahead have not pitted in that AM section, and so we wait to see how it all shakes out at the end of the race. Oh, Leona, a little bump against the wall, and she will have damaged that Mercedes, as well as now having to come into the pits to serve a stop-go penalty. Battle for no positions at all. This is Al being lapped by another driver just ahead of him, I think. Is that correct, Paul?
I think that is the case. The car ahead is Lang in the number 99 Mercedes, according to the timing screens. I've not quite caught the number on the side of that Mercedes that Al is currently chasing down. So we'll come back to you at home on that one. But just a quick call to action to everybody watching the broadcast. Daniel Lang. Once again, Dominic everybody... Lang. Dominic Hang. Once again, thank you to everybody for tuning in today. This is the Charity Cup race. So this is a one-off special race before the main series starts in aid of charity. So please do, as Ben mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, head over to the various SRO locations, donate some money if you can. Every bit of donation is well received. I'm very grateful for. This is a charity event. We hope you're enjoying the racing action. We hope this is a little bit of a taster for what is to come for this SRO Asia series. It's a very exciting championship, the first time we've been in this region with this esports series, and we're looking forward, Ben and I, to bringing you some incredibly tense and exciting racing. And Ben, if this one's anything to go by, this is just very much the starter. I cannot wait for the main course later in the year.
Really enjoy seeing these real-world drivers adapt to the sim world. It isn't the same. It doesn't feel the same. They're lacking certain senses that you might experience before. And that's Takeda off into the barriers. I think he's just about avoided them, but he was moving up actually past Anne for third position in class, but unfortunately now has got some work to do again.
Yeah, Takeda and Anne come together. I think I saw the yellow Porsche of Anne at the side of the track as well. So obviously those two have come together when fighting for track position, which is a real shame. I've been excited to see how Takeda gets on in this race. The sole BMW, of course, had a little bit of difficulty earlier in the race doing a good recovery drive in the AM classification, fighting for definitely the rostrum at the very least in AM. So both drivers now facing the wrong direction. We'll see when the timing screen shakes out where that leaves them on the racetrack. But again, unfortunately, there's been quite a bit of contact in this race, which I think is fair to say we come to expect from pro classification, real world drivers. It's a new environment, Ben, as you rightly said. It's a new experience, and you've not got the visual cues of being able to see the cars physically around you like you can in the cockpit of a real car. So this is a bit of an alien environment for many of these drivers. But that being said, I think the performances across the board have been really quite strong. One man who's been particularly good is Darrell O'Young. We saw him in pit road right at the very beginning of the race, now up to 17th place.
Just under 20 minutes remaining. Yellow flags flying as somebody is having a little moment out there. Still leading is Dominic Ang from Evan Chen. Now, Chen 35 seconds back from Ang would suggest that Chen has pitted. Last lap was a 2:11, so that's a pretty slow lap. So maybe he's had a moment. But Dan Wells down in 5th position. Of course, Dan has cleared his stop-go penalty of 30 seconds, and so he now sits in 5th position as we follow Alex Lang in 6th, coming towards the line. And how far back is Lang over Dan Wells? Not that far, I don't think. Oh, no, 35 seconds back, so not a huge opportunity to chase down. Paddy, though, only 4 seconds back behind Chen, so that's not bad going from Paddy right now, and be interesting to see what kind of pace he can extract out of his Mercedes. Very much the car to have here. Look, still 5 cars in the top 8. 6 cars in the top 10. Kevin C was one of our very, very early pitters. Now, we don't know whether Kevin C actually pitted because he needed to or because he chose to, but either way, he is up now into 10th spot and starting to make an impact on the top of that AM field as Lang tries to clear this row racing Porsche just ahead.
Yeah, the Porsche makes it easy for him in the end by going off the circuit onto the gravel, not the gravel, but onto the grass. And Lang's in a bit of no man's land now as the Porsche gets very close to collecting the rear of the Mercedes. Luckily, they avoid making contact. There's nothing worse than being a lapped car and collecting a car that has overtaken you a lap ahead. So the Porsche behind, the Rower Racing Porsche, beautiful livery on that 911 GT3, needs to be a little bit more circumspect in their braking. Just give the car ahead the track space that it deserves. And Lang has got a bit of a boring race ahead of him now, I think. He's a bit too far away from Wells and probably doesn't have the lap time in that AMG Mercedes to catch up with the Lamborghini ahead. And he's got a gap to O behind as well. So Lang just needs to stroke it home now for the final 17 minutes. But what I'm really interested in, Ben, as you mentioned, is Ang is now in the race lead. I don't recall seeing the little P to say pits at the side of Chen's name. He may have come down pit road and we missed it on the comms, but I don't recall seeing that one. So has Chen lost some time somewhere out on the racetrack, or is it just literally the pit stop cycle working its way through the system? Paddy being only 4.6 seconds in arrears of Evan Chen ahead suggests that maybe there's been a little incident for the Porsche driver, but that's closed the fight up at the front of the field quite nicely indeed.
Yeah, the last lap that I reported was a 2:11. That last one that he's just completed is a 2:09. So he's actually really struggling at the moment. He's about to complete another lap, and we should therefore see if he can get his pace back up to what he would be expecting, which would be a 2:02, something like that. On board with Dominic Ang, and he has such a good advantage. Chen back up to speed then, a 2:02. so equals Dominic Ang, but unfortunately the gap is 35 seconds, so hugely behind. I'm just curious to see if Ang has actually pitted or not. There's no evidence on his dashboard to tell us whether he has or not. What's interesting though is how little ABS he's running. ABS 2, traction control 6. Just like in all of the GT3 cars, they have lots of settings to be able to make these cars easier to drive for gentleman drivers, for AM drivers. And then the real world pros can turn that down to low. But traction control at 6 for Dominic Ang. As a pro driver, he's relying a lot on electricity.
Yeah, that's a very curious setup to run ABS so low, so little ABS in the car, and traction control so high is not what you tend to see, particularly in the faster eSport drivers there. This could be a strategic thing. He could be saving the rear tyres a little bit, trying to rotate the front of the car a little bit more. He's in a Mercedes, it's a very heavy car, it's traditionally a very understeery car. These settings can be changed on the fly by the driver. They can map some controls to be able to adjust traction control, brake bias, ABS settings as they're on the racetrack. So this may be a strategic thing to save the rear of the car. As the race progresses, the car lightens up, but the tyres wear. Some drivers may want to dial the traction control up a little bit just to stop the wheels spinning on acceleration through the many tight corners, the hairpin in particular, and he may have loosened off the ABS at the front just to make sure the wheels don't under-rotate on braking. The front end of the car wants to be a little bit grippier so it can just turn and do a little bit more of the work, as we see a Porsche stopped in a very dangerous part of the Spoon Corner. At that stage of the racetrack, there's not a lot you can do about it if you're heading towards that Porsche, so he needs to get moving or exit from the race as quickly as possible should there be an altercation as the two sister Mercedes pass each other. Ang going for a lap against the car, the sister Mercedes, the sister liveried AMG Mercedes behind.
Yeah, so that Porsche was the number 16 car of John Shen. And actually, curiously, we also saw Adley Fong stationary on circuit at the same time. So I wonder whether, and we've now got number 5 stationary on track, I wonder whether people are running out of fuel, having learning about this platform and realising, oh, you actually do need to fuel the car up. Who was it in the SRO Esports Championship? Somebody fell foul to that on the very last lap of the race and just didn't realise you actually had to fuel the car. Actually, was it in a Lamborghini race though? I was with you.
Yes, and that's the problem with this. Well, not the problem, that's the beauty of this sim and this kind of racing. One of the adjustments I forgot to mention earlier is you can change the fuel map. So how lean or how rich you run the car. Obviously, the richer you run it, the potentially faster it will go, but the more fuel it will use. Very different cars, very different. Oh, as we see a Nissan there in the background just getting a little bit sideways. There we go. That's Taniguchi. It's a Taniguchi coming back onto the track. Some of these cars will run 60 minutes quite easily. Some will require a little bit of fuel management, and some will require a little bit of a splash and dash. So I think you're right, Ben. With 12 and a half minutes left on the clock, some of our drivers may well be finding themselves running out of go-go juice and pulling off to the side of the track, which that's a bit of a disappointing way to end a race, I think, isn't it? Running out of fuel when you've got all the dials.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's a couple of people who are falling foul to it right now. Dominic Ang, though, still leads, has a huge advantage. Don't know when he is going to pit. Don't think he's pitted yet, but has a massive advantage over Evan Chen, who is one of the early pace setters. Then Paddy in third position. Has always been there. Very, very impressive from the Australian. Then Matt Solomon now sits in fourth position, but he is being chased down by Dan Wells. And Dan is able to put in much better pace in this second half of the race than he was in the early running, and so expect that fourth position to change. Then it's Alex Liang in sixth position, and then the first of our AM competitors is Antares Ao in seventh position, Nan Lin in eighth. Nato Takeda still holds on to ninth in the BMW despite having all kinds of mishaps and issues, and Kevin C, the last of the top 10 runners, but a decent way back from Kevin C, I think. So unlikely to see much changes. Our poor old timing screen can't really keep up with all these cars on different laps. Adley Fong there, 6 laps down on his nearest challenger, is what it's saying, down in 21st position. Frank Yu, 2 laps down on Taniguchi. Frank, obviously, the part member or part owner of Craft Bamboo Racing. And good to see so many Craft Bamboo cars entered. Here is Yui Tan in the Row Racing Porsche, and under pressure, not for position, because Takeda is at least 1 lap, if not 5 laps ahead, I think. There is quite a big difference between the performance at the moment in this Charity Cup. But as we progress through the whole of September, October, November, we will see all of these drivers, link up with sim drivers to try and get some extra performance, and that's not very nice of the Porsche squeezing Takeda to the grass. Surely Takeda can send it down the inside on the brakes. Oh, he's quite late on the brakes, is Tan. Takeda just about slotting himself through. But what we'll see is a lot of these drivers will be making contact with their sim racing counterparts, and we will see all of these drivers progress hugely over the next couple of months as they learn how this platform works.
And that's exactly right, Ben. This is a learning exercise for almost everybody out on the circuit. They're learning how to behave in a simulator, in traffic, racing against the rivals, the physical demands of driving a racing sim. It may seem, for those of you at home that maybe aren't engaged in sim racing the way that some of us are, that it's a sit-down sport, it's a computer game. You've got a wheel, you sat down, it's not a physical experience, but like any competitive activity, be it something that's physical, picking up a tennis racket, kicking a football, through to motor racing, through to sim racing, the mental strain and pressure of being on form, of hitting your marks every time, of racing against other drivers, of fighting to give your absolute everything, whether that's at the front of the field or at the back of the field. Doing that for 60 minutes takes a physical and emotional toll on you. There's also the physicality of sat in the car, there's warm temperatures in the room that you're running on, you've got a hot computer, no doubt, kicking out, expelling warm air, trying to keep itself cool. You've got the pressure of racing. It's a physically demanding activity. Not so much maybe as weightlifting or something, but it's still a physically demanding activity. And the drivers have got to get used to that one in a competitive arena, used to the nuances of driving a virtual car, of how the car changes over the course of a race distance, a stint. When the fuel comes off, the tyres start to wear, the track's rubbering in, you've got debris, you've got tyre marbles that are reducing the usable competitive racing line. All these things, to a lesser or greater degree, are the first time these drivers have experienced them in ACC in a proper race environment. So regardless of race position, this is a massive learning experience for everybody. And being professional racing drivers, they will study what they've learnt today, and they will take it away, and they will maximise it when we hit the first round of the series proper.
Rick Young making a very easy pass in, I think, the only Ferrari that we had entered into this series. It's not its traditional red either. It's very kind of camo flavoured Ferrari, but an easy pass past the Row Racing Porsche. It doesn't seem like it was for position though. I think it was Yui Tan he was passing. But Rick Young was another guy who's definitely had more than one pit stop. I think he had early penalties. And so he sits down in 14th position right now, 11 seconds back from Ichan An, who is his nearest rival. Although actually our graphics there say he's 2 laps down. So I'm a bit confused as to what's going on. Graphics versus the timing screen that I have. But I don't know. We'll see. And the BMW facing the wrong direction again there, Takeda. So 3rd position is looking increasingly perilous for our Japanese driver in 9th position right now, because that's it's not the first time we've seen him facing the wrong direction. I'm sure now it means he's carrying some damage as well in his Turner Motorsport BMW. 6.5 minutes remaining then. We've clicked over to 6 o'clock local time, and it is Dominic Ang who leads Evan Chen, with Padiachi in 3rd, Solomon in 4th, and now Ang comes to pit lane. He's gone most of the race on one set of tyres, on a full tank of fuel, and he's decided to pit at the very end to put all of these drivers under pressure to make them drive hard. And let's now see where Ang comes out in relation to Chen. That will then be the battle for the win in the Charity Cup.
Yeah, great tactic by Ing. Drivers, there's no pit window in this race. The drivers can stop as early or as late as they so desire, as long as they don't stop after they've passed the start-finish straight. And Ing now, very minimal time spent stationary in the pit, so just put in the mandatory couple of litres in the car. Chen is too far down the road, so this is an easy win now for Evan Chen. The question is, can Ing has got a stop-go penalty? Oh, Dominic Ing speeding in the pit lane, comes out so keen to try and keep close to Padiachi, who now moves himself up to third position. He doesn't say it on the timing stack, but Padiachi is second. And Dominic Ing, after doing absolutely everything right for the last 55 minutes, makes the simplest of simple mistakes, trying to minimise the amount of time, brake as late as you possibly can to the pit lane, speed limit line, and he's just overcooked it and sadly for Dominic Ing, Ben, that's pretty very much out of contention for the podium places. But it lets Solomon, a driver that we've not spoken about much, we've not seen much after his early woes, Solomon now we're taking the third step of the podium.
Yeah, Matt Solomon racing from Hong Kong, part of the fleet of Craft Bamboo Mercedes that we've got. And he will get himself promoted for sure up into third position onto the podium behind Padiachi, who is racing out of Australia for Tarmac Esports, also in the Mercedes. And then Evan Chen, who has been there and thereabouts, racing out of Chinese Taipei. He doesn't have a team. He's racing privately, but he is going at the moment with no mistakes, of course, has a 10-second advantage over Padiachi. And I think the lack of team probably will punish him as we go through the series, because all these Craft Bamboo teammates, they all work together. Remember, you have to set up this car as well. It's not just a case of jumping in it and driving because it's got a fixed setup. Everybody has to set their car up. You have to set a Porsche up very differently to Mercedes, for instance. And there are not that many Porsches in the race. He's got 3 others in this particular race, but he could do with a teammate that he could bounce ideas off regarding setup for the championship that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And perhaps we'll see that now he's really put his flag out there to cruise now, a couple of laps left, cruise home and get himself on the top step of this podium of the Charity Cup race. Definitely not the man I expected, but Dan Wells made too many errors. He's the guy who knows the platform very, very well. And interestingly, I just read actually that the championship director sent a message to Dominic to say, remember your mandatory pit stop. So I wonder whether Dominic Ing actually had forgotten he needed to do a pit stop. And he therefore was kind of reminded by the organisers that he needed to right late on the race.
Well, good for Ing that he managed to eventually get that pit stop in, but unfortunately, it's all gone a little bit wrong in terms of a stop-go penalty. Ing will have to serve that before the checkered flag waves as well, for fear of being disqualified from the final results for not serving his penalty. So really, he needs to get down pit road on this lap to be in time for it. Takeda, who we've seen sideways, facing the wrong direction, in the gravel, in the midst of fights, in the BMW, is on pit road as well, so not quite sure why Takeda is down pit road at the moment, whether he's got a little bit of damage or whether he's thinking he's had enough of this one. But Takeda currently 4th in the AM category, as we're seeing Philip Tang now on the side of the racetrack. Is that a fuel issue? Not quite sure, but the car was running slowly and quickly flicked to it and flicked away. It wasn't Tang actually, this was Tang in the Phoenix Racing Audi. I'm not quite sure who we saw there, Ben. Don't know if your eyes were quicker than mine to catch that image as 1 or 2 cars head down pit road.
All kinds of cars coming into pit road late in the race, maybe due to damage. We can see that Tang is carrying damage at his Audi. He moves up to 11th position, the front bumper and the bonnet flapping around on that car. I thought that we might have a little battle going on between Nan Lin and Antares for the lead of the AM category, but I just can't really tell from the very confused graphics exactly where each other are on track, because I think they might be separated by a couple of laps. Either way, here is Daryl O'Young. We haven't spoken about Daryl O'Young at all. Very, very successful Asian driver. Really turned his hand to GT racing so well, having raced in the World Touring Car Championship for so long, and now part of the organisation of Craft Bamboo as well. But early problems for Darrell Young. I think he got caught up in an accident at the very start of the race, and so only 15th in that Mercedes. But as I say, surrounded by Craft Bamboo teammates in the Mercedes, and I'm pretty sure we'll see Darrell adjust better and better to the ACC platform as we go along. And do not forget that if you would like to participate, there is the ability to race in the Sim AM category as we run through the series. So you can qualify on a leaderboard. The leaderboard is on the SRO Esports website. And if you would like a place as part of the AM category in the sim race that we've got coming up for the next races across our championship, then that is the way to do it. I would give you some advice though. Make sure you've done a lot of practice because it is not easy whatsoever. It really is not easy at all. Red numbers, which means we have run out of time. The next time Chen comes over the line, he is going to be taking the checkered flag. Paddiacci in second position, 11 seconds back. We've not seen anything of him, but Paddiacci comes over the line now and gets... Oh no, this is the checkered flag for Chen. Over the line, and Chen has taken victory in the Porsche. Racing out of Chinese Taipei. A really strong opening stint, hassling Dan Wells. Finally got clear air, didn't make any errors. And it's Porsche that take victory in the Charity Cup race here at Suzuka. Paddiacci coming across the line in second position, just 10.9 seconds back by the end. Darrell Young just behind them has also taken the flag. The best of our AM competitors, Antares Ao in seventh position, but ahead of Nin Lin. And there's Matt Solomon for Craft Bamboo, taking third position, 22 seconds back in the end. But after spinning on the opening lap, that is a really good effort. And he's managed to keep Dan Wells at bay as well, because we still wait for Dan to cross the line on this last lap. But of course, Dominic Ang led the race too, but unfortunately took a stop-go penalty after his pit stop. Here comes Frank Yu with a very battered looking Mercedes. Luckily he doesn't have to own and repair that one, Frank, because that needs a lot of love. The whole front bumper's falling. I don't think I've seen a worse damaged car on ACC. He's really done a good job of that.
Yeah, that one needs a little bit of gaffer tape to stick it back together again for the next race. And we've seen quite a bit of contact. Takeda in the end gets a 60-second time penalty for not serving a stop and go and his last pit stop. But I think, Ben, that was a highly successful first race. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and a beautiful drive from Evan Chen to take race victory when, I think it's fair to say, against all odds.
Plenty will have been learnt, even by the most experienced, such as Dan Wells. Do not speed in the pit lane. I think he was very lucky not to get penalties for the collisions that he had. 2 collisions for the lead of the race. Unnecessary contact with Melvin Moe and with Evan Chen, and yet still Evan somehow got away without too much damage and was able to take the victory by 11 seconds.
Yeah, a really strong performance from Evan Chen. Managed to keep his head when trying to find a way past. Well, as a driver, as a racer, especially in a one-off race like this, where basically the end result is everything that matters, to know that you're quicker than the car in front, not be able to find a way past, and then to have the annoyance of seeing that car ahead pull away during the quick section towards sector 3 of the track, that is so tempted to throw one down the inside, to do something silly, to try and drive. What drivers always do in that situation is drive faster than they or the car are capable. Suddenly, by thinking, trying harder, will find a second a lap that I never had before. So Chen did a very professional, very sensible job and was rewarded with a much-deserved race victory.
Nobody has yet congratulated you on that funky shirt that you're wearing. I think it's beautiful.
This is positively a mundane shirt compared to some when I was selecting it through. I do like my floral.
I do like your floral. So don't go away. We've had the real world drivers participate, and now you're getting a chance to see the very best Asian esports races. And I tell you what, from what we know already, there's a huge amount of following in Asia for Assetto Corsa Competizione in the real sim drivers, isn't there?
There is, and hopefully this is going to be the wick that lights the fire for esport, motorsport, sim racing in the Asia region. It's a great opportunity for drivers in that region to get qualified for a high quality, high value championship. Great racing, great drivers, fabulous commentators, some might say, on a wonderful broadcast. So I hope to see many new names that I'm less familiar with out on the racetrack with us for the next race and during the whole championship ahead. It's a great opportunity to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of names that we do know already on the list. 26th position there, Naqib Aslan. We've seen him. Jason Tay for Legion of Racers. I think he was a qualifier on Assetto Corsa, very high-profile driver in Asia. Amir Haziq as well. I think we've seen him in Lamborghinis. Luis Moreno, not the Moreno that is recently driven, qualified to be a Formula One esports driver. That confused me the other day. But a good grid of 42 drivers. And look, the time 2022, none of our pro drivers from the last race would have even got into qualification of that race. That is the gap between these pros, sim pros, I mean, and the real world pro drivers. Generally, when I do one of these competitions, I'm about 5 seconds off the pace of the real pro sim drivers. That's how hard it is to get up to speed.
Yeah, because the time and commitment and energy that goes into something like this, sim racing and esport now is a big thing. It's a very important championships. People know you can't just get in and rely on natural talent. Talent gets you so far, but practice, determination, commitment, that is what you need to be successful. Because sim racing is, you can do it from home, you can do it on your rig, you haven't got to pay for fuel, travel, track time. You can literally put thousands and thousands of kilometers into your car, where in real world, your track time is limited. So some of these guys have really put the mileage in to get going. As we see the grid bed starting to form, no comfort breaks allowed for us commentators. We're into race 2 of the day.
Drivers then heading around this slow formation lap, getting everything warmed. The early part of the lap isn't really regulated by the game, so they can go as fast as they like to try and get temperature into the brakes and into the tyres. And then they will all then have to fall into line. An amazing selection of cars, actually, in this race in comparison to what we saw in the real world. Presumably, the real world drivers selected the cars in which they would be racing in the real world, and therefore there's only a certain amount of cars that are available that get shipped over to Asia. So there are some Bentleys, for instance, in this particular field that we didn't see before. There's an Aston Martin that we didn't see before. There's a couple of McLarens too, and even a couple of people selecting the Honda, which is my favourite car, but apparently it's appallingly slow in the way that it's been BOP'd in the particular game. So a lot of Porsches at the head of the field. Laundry House, a take, I believe, on Leighton House, looking at those liveries. Very, very clever boys. Quite enjoy that. But they are not only are they jokers of being Australians, but they're also fast too.
Yeah, brilliant looking livery, that one. I love a little bit of a nod to retro Formula One, the Leighton House, of course, of Ivan Capelli back in the early 1990s. A beautiful car, beautiful livery. Adrian Newey designed, if memory serves me correct. So one of the early Adrian Newey entries before he basically took the sport by storm with Williams, McLaren, and now Red Bull. But we've got 42 cars on the grid. The rules and regulations are exactly the same as the race that we've just watched. A 60-minute race. A pit stop is required. 1 litre minimum of fuel to be taken on board. There is no pit window. We've got very similar time of day, so I expect the conditions will remain very, very similar to what we've just seen for the real-world professional drivers. But the big difference is every single guy and girl that has qualified, we've got a couple of female racers in this field as well, these have qualified through a hot lap competition. These are drivers that have put the time, effort and energy in to maximising their performance on this racetrack in the car they're driving. So the pace will be higher, the knowledge and experience will be higher, and this is a great opportunity to have a very competitive motor race.
Down towards the 130R corner. This is when they'll need to start forming up. They'll need to be able to catch the cars in front, get themselves into those squares that we were talking about. The game really takes control at this point and make sure that everybody's in the right position. So grey numbers are our AM competitors and the red numbers are our pro competitors. So anybody who qualified is grey and the pro competitors are the red numbers. Although actually that doesn't correlate at all to my entry list. So perhaps ignore the numbers. I'm not quite sure they're quite right on our timing screens. Either way, we are now getting to a point where we can go racing. Those three, I'm going to call them Leighton houses, all race, aren't I? Laundry houses, Pedersen, Lawrenson and Rayton. The Mercedes and two Porsches chasing down Joseph de Jesus the fourth. Towards the line then. Very difficult first corner. They're nicely bunched together. They're good in line. Green lights and we are racing. And a nice start from the two Mercedes. Not a good start from Rayton, I think, on the inside of row 2. He gets swallowed up. But so far, everyone cleanly through the first corner. There's a Ferrari in there as well from Shirawaka in 5th position. And just trying to see, we do have a yellow flag, so somebody has gone round at the back of the field. A couple of cars facing the wrong direction. We'll identify those in a second. But Pedersen is holding on in the Mercedes ahead of his two teammates, but the teammates are in Porsches. Now, never quite understand why people do that, because you want your teammates to be in the same car so you can work on setup. But clearly he prefers that Mercedes, which seems to be the chosen car, even though we had a Porsche win last time out. There's the Aston Martin. Wow, look at that for a livery from Sotamuto.
Yeah, that's so you do not miss that Aston Martin in your rear view mirror. And at the moment, he's trying to find a way past the Honda NSX. As you rightly said, Ben, the Honda, beautiful looking and sounding car, but not necessarily one of the more competitive machines in the field. As we see a Ferrari now, that's Shirawaka now in the Sky-sponsored Ferrari, the Tempesta racing car, up the inside into Spoon. There's no doing there. The Ferrari covers the inside line, but runs a little bit wide. That opens the door to the Mercedes up the inside. It tries to carry all the way around the outside of the corner. There's a little bit of reduced grip out there, and that is a place lost to the Zeng, I believe it is, in the Mercedes AMG ahead. Ferrari now under pressure again to 130R. Brave man goes up the inside at 130R. The Mercedes thinks better of it, but compromises himself and comes under pressure from the Lamborghini behind. So heading into the final chicane, too wide. Lamborghini and Mercedes, will they both fit through the corner? Yes, they do at the back of the shot. As we see the Lamborghini now a couple of taps to the rear quarter of the Lamborghini from the Mercedes. The Lambo just loses control but keeps it on straight and narrow.
Very interesting to see 3 drivers heading into the pits, 4 drivers heading into the pits. We've got a cluster of drivers taking their pit stops early doors here. It's Bokeda, Muto, Bull and various others now heading to the bottom of the timing screens. They've decided they're in traffic. They want to release themselves out of traffic, and that is a very, very interesting move. They feel like they can run all the way to the flag. We've actually got about 10 cars in pit stop. So Philippa Bukida, Sotamuto, Stephen Bull, Nakawa, Riley, Lucas Marshall and Charles Theresa. I think that's it. In and out very, very quickly. And so now we've got a really interesting split strategy going on. About 30 cars still not to pit, but then a cluster of 10 cars led by the lady racer Philippa, who have pitted, although actually she is in the pits for a lot longer than some of the guys who have been in and out. And so actually the one that leads, I think, of those sort of pitted is Stephen Bull in the 42 car. So look out for Octane Online Racing, the Lexus, as the pit stops cycle through. Remember that name because he was the man who has made the best stops. Sotamuto also just behind, having pitted. and they're up to 33rd position as we watch the head of the field, De Jesus, not getting away at the moment.
I think that's a really interesting strategy to get in early doors, avoid running slower in the heat of the battle. The first laps, the cars are as condensed as they'll ever be during the course of the race. We don't have full course caution safety cars in this race, so you're going to be fighting for track position. You're going to be going naturally slower than you're capable of doing, either because you're defending or attacking. I've commentated in other races where drivers have come down pit road immediately and then picked their way through the slower traffic, and by the time they've got to the faster people at the front of the field, they're coming in for their pit stops and they've got clear track. You know the tyres can run a full race distance pretty comfortably at this stage. We need to keep our eye on that one as the race progresses, Ben, because that is going to be really, really interesting to see how quickly they can clear the slower traffic. 42 cars in the field, that's a lot of cars on a relatively short circuit, so they will be coming into traffic quite quickly indeed. They're going to want to avoid being held up by the naturally slower drivers, and these could be ones to watch for the duration of this race. But the Leighton House, Laundry House type, 3 cars in second, third, fourth, Peterson, Rayton and Lawrenson are all starting to squabble amongst themselves a little bit, and they're letting the De Jesus front get away. They need to start thinking more as a team, I think, and start charging towards the Mercedes ahead.
Dylan Micallef from Australia in the Lamborghini just behind this group. He was the leading car behind this top 4, but over the start finishing line last time through got passed by Zheng in the Mercedes, so that's a change of position. But look how tight it is on our leaderboard. The front 4 locked together, and then there's a big old queue of cars from 5th back to 10th position, and then a bit of a gap and a bit of spreading out, but then plenty of battling I can see further back as well. And presumably, Paul, that little number 1 that we can see, that orange number 1, is a signal to us that they have or they haven't pitted yet.
Yep, that's right. That should be the number of pit stops, on-schedule pit stops, remaining to take. So if you've got a 1 there, that means they've not stopped. They've still got a mandatory stop to do. And when that goes away or goes to 0, that means they've been down pit road, they've served the minimum requirements needed during the course of the race to be classified as a finisher. And Terry Rayton that we're looking at now in the middle, the meet in the Laundry House sandwich of cars, was right behind Peterson in the Mercedes. Seems to have dropped back a little bit now as we're seeing Rose heading down pit lane. So another driver, everybody, well not everybody, but a vast majority are looking at taking an early stop in this race.
Now Mia Rose, the other lady racer, is actually the lady with, or the driver with the fastest lap of the race. She's the only one to get into the 2-minute deads, and that was last lap. So I wonder whether she did a short fill at the start of the race and has now come into the pits to get a full tank, because she was incredibly fast, way faster than we've seen anybody able to do. And so now into pit lane. Has she won the undercut over Stephen Bull? She hasn't. In fact, Stephen Bull has lost a position to Charles Becerra in 28th spot now, but that is the first of our pit stoppers, and they'll start to appear on our screen, although actually it says Charles Becerra has not pitted, and that means that when he did take his stop, it must have been for a penalty rather than a legit stop. So Stephen Bull is the man that leads our pitted runners in that Lexus.
This is what's interesting about such a large field. We've got 42 drivers taking part in this race. Bull, as you say, is the leader of the cars that have been down pit road, but he's 29th. There's 28 cars ahead of him to clear before he can be back in a race leading position or fighting at the front of the field. Some of those drivers he's got to clear are people that he's got more natural speed, he's always demonstrated, should I say, more pace than so far this race. But some of them will be out of position drivers that are really very quick. So it's a gamble stopping this soon. Normally, if you're going to do an early stop, you would do it 3 or 4 laps into the race, so the gaps have become larger. You've got more real estate in which to work with. But as we can see on the timing screen, Bull only half a second away from the chasing the back of the non-stop cars. So I'll be interested to see how quickly he can find his way through, as we see a drive-through penalty then for the number 22 Lamborghini down pit road. So another early drive-through penalty, possibly for a transgression at the start of the race. And it's been 10 minutes already. It's been very action-packed.
Yeah, amazing to see all these pit stops happening so early. I do think that we saw Charles into the pits. I just think that he was handed maybe a drive-through penalty on the first lap of the race, so he was serving that rather than taking his stop, because he is leading that pack of people who have pitted. But unfortunately, his pit stop didn't count, as it won't do also for Bank Thanathip from Thailand, who you just said has come into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty. So he still needs to make another stop to legitimately do his mandatory pit stop, as we now switch our attention to King Long Lee in 8th position, and part of a good little group of drivers, including that Lamborghini I mentioned earlier, Dylan Mikalev, who is falling behind now Zheng and losing touch of Zheng, but then Zheng really losing touch of our front 4 competitors, who kind of are a bit equally spaced now, but not close enough to make any moves.
Yep, so the interesting dynamic we've got at the front of the field is these are the laundry house cars in 2, 3 and 4, as King Long Lee looking to the inside of the chicane. It's a very tight chicane, not quite close enough to the BMW to really be able to get the car alongside. Long Lee now needs to sort of hold back a little bit, let the BMW and the Lamborghini ahead scrap. The BMW of Law seems to be faster than Mikalev's. Mikalev goes to the inside into T1 to defend. The BMW goes around the outside. Not enough space. Will he be able to switch back for the second part of the corner? No, the Lamborghini is wise to that manoeuvre, covers the inside line. And this is the chess game that is racing at Suzuka. There are parts of the track you can overtake. There are parts of the track that you need to go one by one formation. And if your car is quicker than the rivals at the tight sections, will be tied any opportunity you've got to find a way past. And this BMW of Yat Lam Law needs to be very careful now not to put himself under pressure from the chasing pack behind.
Amazing to see yet another BMW. We saw one in the real race, and now in the sim race as well. Not necessarily the fancied car, but AK Informatica and Assetto Corsa Competizione and SRO all working together to try to make sure that all of the cars are equal. The BOP applies correctly, not just how it works in the real world, but slightly tweaked to make sure that it is fair in the virtual world as well. And actually, very little tweaking needing to be done, because the simulation that Assetto Corsa Competizione has created is so good that the BOP, the SRO applied to the real world cars, actually applies to the virtual cars very well as well. Law looking really good now. And Mikal, I'm wondering whether that Lamborghini has damage, because obviously qualified very, very well, high up on the field, but now in a straight line being gobbled up by the BMW, and the BMW is a brick.
Yes, the BMW has got a lot of frontal space pushing itself through the air, which is obviously a negative effect, and it's very positive for the car following for the slipstream as the Lamborghini dives very late down pit road. King Long Lee does well to not collect the back of that Lamborghini. Could have done with some indicators at that point in the race, but as you say, Mikalev maybe carrying a little bit of an issue, not showing the race pace is not transferring as it did in qualification. He did a 1 minute 59.079 in qualification, which was good enough for 6th place on the grid, but Mikalev falling backwards very quickly, decided to go down pit road, get some new tyres. If you change tyres, of course, for those at home, you can change the pressure of those tyres, which will have an impact on the handling of your car. Mikalev still on pit road suggests that maybe he's doing more than just the minimum splash and dash to get the Lamborghini as it now exits the pit lane in 21st position. But King Long Lee, that opens him up. That opens the Mercedes up now to make a move on Law in the BMW ahead. Great car, that one. Very powerful, but as Ben said, one of the largest GT3 specification cars. The target of many an amusing internet meme over the years. The M3 very fast, the BMW very fast car, currently in 6th position in the hands of Law.
Well, at least the green light is now on the side of Mikhaev, and that means he is the leading pitter. No other greens ahead of him, so that is, in a way, good news, although he is still losing time. So what's happened now? I fear as though he might have fallen off the track on this particular lap. I'll see if I can check up on him. He actually is not far away from Stephen Bull. You can't see it on the graphics as we watch Ho and Breyer absolutely locked together. And actually that's Brady, isn't it, in the Porsche, who has made up a position.
These cars are all separated by absolutely nothing. Yeah, all separated by absolutely nothing, these cars, Ben. Defending and attacking. It's a very stressful time for a driver as the Porsche cannot brake on the grass, goes straight over the chicane. He'll have to be cautious to give back any advantage that he may have gained, which he does. Catches the gravel a little bit as well. If that had been 15 years ago, that would have been beached in the gravel, but luckily he's found the access road and got back on track. So very easy to do. Catch the outside wheel, on the grass. The reduction in grip is just enough that when you turn the car in, it doesn't want to turn in, and he's gone straight over, but no damage. The tyres won't be too negatively impacted. Give him a few corners, the car will back up to temperature again, and he can rejoin this train of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars all fighting for the same bit of tarmac.
And they really are fighting over the same bit of tarmac. Amazing to see just how little there is in there. We haven't really seen, I don't think I've ever seen a Nissan actually being chosen to be used. So this is great to have a Nissan in the fight. We've got a Lexus in there as well, just slightly creeping up the road. Then the Ferrari behind of Hazik, and taking to the grass to try and find a way. There's no overtaking opportunity there. Aslan is also in there in another of the Lexuses, and then Kimura in another of the Nissans. So this is a very unusual group of cars. I say unusual because it tends to be the cars that you focus on and get yourself chosen for. McLarens are very strong. Mercedes are very strong. Porsches are very strong. Those are the cars you see at the forefront of ACC. But here we have Lexus and Nissan fighting with Ferrari and Mercedes.
And of course, the beauty of GT3 is we're seeing cars 3 wide on the run up to 130R. The Aston Martin on the inside, I fear, is going to get shuffled down the pike. Ferrari trying to overtake on the grass, looks to the inside. This is probably the least likely overtaking spot on the circuit, but the Aston Martin through the huge Bentley behind, manages to get back into position. That's taking in Ho in the 999 privately entered purple with the British flag style logo on the side of it. The Bentley concedes position, drops to 14th place. Jan behind in the 515 Ferrari looks to try and find some advantage. Toes up to the back of the big Bentley as Brady goes down pit road in 16th. The Ferrari's got a good slip speed. Looks to the inside of T1. It's a minor braking point. There's not much opportunity. It's a long braking zone into the second part of the corner. We're now heading into the stake. The left-hander, third gear. No pace to overtake there. The Ferrari wisely backs out of it a little bit. Tries to give a run through this section of corners. Out at the end of the stake, the Bentley catches a bit too much grass, a bit too much oversteer on corner entry. Ferrari will do well now to stick in the wheel tracks of the purple car ahead. In the next section of corners, Negative 1 and Negative 2 presents a half overtaking opportunity. The real passing place is at the hairpin, is the next chance that Ferrari's got. But as is always the problem, Ben, with the aerodynamic cars, following close behind in a multiple section of corners, you will lose front traction, you will lose lap time, and you start dropping away.
Still a fantastic battle to watch, and all of these guys yet to pit as well, with 42 minutes still remaining on the clock. I'm interested to see the 22nd and 23rd battle as well. Mikhail Kalev and Stephen Bull, the first of our pit stoppers. As the Ferrari now, Chan looks to the inside of the Bentley of Ho. These two both racing out of Hong Kong. And really, really awesome to see all the different countries represented in this race. We've got from the Philippines, Russell Reyes. We've got lots of drivers from Australia, Malaysia, India even, and Japan, China, plenty from Hong Kong. And really, really cool to see the whole of Asia represented. And the ability, and knowing that there's the ability to compete at the very highest level wherever you are in the world. So many of these drivers wouldn't have the chance to compete on the world stage. But thanks to esports racing and thanks to Assetto Corsa Competizione and SRO, putting this platform together means, well, as you guys know from watching, you are watching on the same platform that you'll be watching the real world SRO races this evening from Road America, and also the World Challenge races and the 25 hours this year of Spa 2. So an amazing platform for all of these sim races to show off themselves, and looking forward to seeing how their season progresses. Remember, once you get into a season, the successful drivers will also be given some success ballast, and they'll have to manage that. And in the previous World Challenge Esports Series we saw, it was really down to the car choice, and having so many successful McLaren drivers that meant it was actually hard for the McLaren to become the champion, because each race they would collect up effectively too much weight. And we also saw that in the real as well as the sim racing drivers. Now, is that a little battle going on? Is that a bit of lappery going on? There's a very slow McLaren being lapped. So Pedersen, the leading laundry house in the Mercedes, and then the two Porsches behind, and not really putting each other under too much pressure, just sort of steady gaps between those front four, and they've done a good job actually to stretch the lead out to 10 seconds now over Zen in 5th position, and Zen will soon have Law for company, I think, because slowly but surely Lam Law from Hong Kong has been closing the gap in his BMW.
Yeah, these teammates, these laundry house cars, in the first 5-10 minutes of the race, squabbling amongst themselves and looked to be giving the advantage to Jesus at the head of the field. And I wondered if it's worth allowing Terry, I think it was Terry Rayton was the quicker of the three drivers at the time, to have the challenge for race lead. But it looks like they've now gapped each other a little bit. They're all kind of running a second and a half apart, and they're just allowing, I think, too much of an easy time for the Mercedes ahead. So I'd like to see Carl Peterson or one of the three drivers throw the dice a little bit, maybe jump down pit road, see if there's an opportunity to perform an undercut, see if they can mix things up a little bit. The teammates will want one of their cars to cross the finish line first, and if there's something they can do to create a little bit of jeopardy, because it's too straightforward for De Jesus the fourth at the front of the field at the moment, and he's just stroking the car home. He's managing the tyres, he's managing the car, he's managing himself. He needs to be put under a little bit more pressure if that fight is really going to materialise. But one fight that is more than materialised is this fight for just outside the top 10. We can see the purple Bentley that we looked at earlier on now gap the Ferrari behind and starting to close up on the back of the fight in front. As we look at Andy Nanyao in the beautiful and very rare, as Ben rightly says, Nissan Skyline. I forgot what car it was then, that's how rare I see it. Nissan Skyline under pressure from the Lexus behind. The Lexus not quite got enough room, comes out of it, opens the door to the Audi as well. So the Audi R8 LMS GT3 on the long drive up into the spoon corners. It's on the outside, gives a go to the inside, which becomes the outside of the spoon. Nothing doing there, and the Lexus lives to fight another day. But this beautiful Nissan is looking a little bit squirrely on turning, so maybe the tyres starting to overheat a little bit in the slipstream of the Ferrari of Suzuka ahead.
Coming up to halfway point in this race for professional sim drivers and amateur sim drivers, and you could be on the grid. If you're watching and fancy a go, make sure you get yourself Assetto Corsa Competizione, visit SRO Esports, and you could be on the grid for our races that will start in the middle of October and run all the way through to December. The whole series for the World Challenge Asia Esports Series, visiting some of the most amazing tracks across the world, all put together, laser scanned beautifully by the guys at Kunos, who made this game. And here is Andy Nang in 17th spot. Huge pressure from Haziq in the Ferrari behind, but so far so good, and actually starting to be closed in by those guys that took their pit stops in the early part of the race. Charles Theresa, Dylan Mikalev and Stephen Bull, our top three. Well, I say our top three pitters, but of course, Thuracera already still owes us a pit stop, having been given a drive-through penalty. Interesting to note that the pace of our leading driver, last lap, Joseph De Jesus, did a 1:59.994. So first guy to break into the 59s. Only Carl Pedersen behind has managed to do it. Terry Rayton has as well. But the guys that he's effectively racing, those that are pitted early doors, because they're in much heavier cars and they've got all their fuel still on board to get themselves to the end of the race, they're still in the 201s. So I don't know whether this undercut, which you see so often in Formula One, I don't think that's necessarily going to work here.
No, that might have been a gamble too far for those drivers, and Mikalev and Bull have been separated. Since Mikalev came out of pit lane in the Lamborghini, they've been separated by less than half a second for the duration, so neither driver able to extract the absolute optimum lap time out of their car, which is going to compromise them yet further as we're looking at Amir Hazik in the Ferrari 488 GT3, the number 11 Ferrari. Bit of an unusual colour scheme there, purpley blue and white, currently 18th place, chasing down the Nissan that we spoke about earlier on. So a Lexus, a Nissan, a Ferrari, a Honda. That is a combination of cars that is just unique to GT3 racing. As we're looking back now at King Long Lee in the Mercedes. Long Lee currently in third of four cars fighting for the top 5 positions. So King Long Lee got a little bit of ground to make up, followed that BMW of Law now for the last 25-30 minutes or so. No apparent additional speed in the Mercedes to get up alongside the BMW. King Long Lee will be looking at an opportunity to see if the BMW can close up to the fellow Mercedes in front, start holding each other up, maybe get involved in incidents, and then take advantage of any gap that might appear. These 4 cars are very evenly matched, and Ben, on a track like Suzuka, although it's a beautiful circuit, a fan favourite and a driver favourite, incredibly difficult to overtake when the cars are so evenly balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. The only real overtaking chance is the braking zone into the final chicane right here, but that circuit just narrows so much that actually you have to be so brave and risk contact if you want to make it work. And obviously we saw in the real race a little bit earlier on such differences in talent and such difference in ability and experience as well, that ultimately it was a lot easier. Now to the outside line into turn 1, not necessarily the way forward for Long Lee, and cannot find a way past Law. But all of this really is happening because they've caught Zheng. And Zheng was really, really strong in the early running of the race. But now I feel as though he perhaps has set his car up to only run half a race on his tyres, and is really, really struggling. So Zheng in the Mercedes, BMW for Law, and then Long Lee next to the Mercedes, with Shirakawa in the Ferrari, watching brief, waiting for something to happen. And to tell you what, that BMW is getting impatient now to try and get into 5th position.
Yeah, Zheng is very much the cork in the bottle for these drivers, as you rightly say. The BMW half a lap ago was under pressure from the car behind, and now it's all painting himself to the back of Zheng's Mercedes, who's finding traffic is starting to play a factor as well. So we're almost at half distance. There's 32 and a half minutes left on the clock. Various cars have stopped on pit lane. Noticing that point, actually, to interrupt myself, Stephen Bull is now alone at the front of the currently stopped cars. So what has happened to the Lamborghini? Michelev is 1 second, separated by half a second, has dropped off of our timing screen. So Bull has got a bit of clear track ahead of him and behind him, more importantly.
Dylan down to 26th position, so has made an error somewhere and dropped down a good, I'd say, 10-15 seconds. And again, running a little bit wide. Look how frustrated the Ferrari is now. Shirakawa trying to get a run through 130R so we could draw alongside into the chicane, but couldn't do that. Now make sure you've got a good exit out of the chicane. See what you can do down the straight. Time of day, the same as what we saw in the real world. race a little bit earlier on, so just after 5:30, the beautiful sunset, and now our leaders are in the pits. So De Jesus has taken a stop, as has Terry Rayton, first and third in the race. Let's see where they come out, fully laden with fuel. They've obviously done half and half. Also important to note how long they stay in the pits for. Rayton already leading, as is De Jesus.
Now that's interesting. So both drivers have elected to do the absolute minimum required of them to register a pit stop to be free to race to the end of the flag. So both drivers would have started on full tanks, will not be changing tyres, will be coming straight back out in basically the same configuration they went down pit road. And will De Jesus have enough speed in this Mercedes to maintain, consolidate, and potentially expand his race lead? Peterson, we've not seen much of him so far, ran second in the early running. Was he playing the long game? Was he preserving his car? And now he's got clear track, he'll know this is his opportunity to get the foot absolutely flat to the floor and start making a gap. Of course, Ben and everybody at home, there's no team managers, there's no pit crew, there's nobody on the pit wall spotting where the other cars are and giving updates to these drivers. Once you're in that cockpit, you're on your own. You've got a little bit of data on your screen, but the difference between a good and a great driver is looking at that data, understanding it, converting it into actions on the circuit. And Peterson will be very keen to see how much traffic De Jesus has found himself in and if it's worth him staying out or covering that pit stop.
Actually, looks like De Jesus has got a pretty clear track ahead of him at the moment. The next car up the road is Jason Tay from Singapore, but he's a decent way up the road, so a good bit of track De Jesus has found himself in, and let's see what his next lap time can be in response. Interestingly, way ahead of Stephen Bull, who's down in 18th position. De Jesus in 9th spot. Rayton in 13th. So Terry Rayton, a slightly, well, considering where he came out onto track, his pit stop was slightly faster, but because he was further back, he's actually got 3 cars between him and De Jesus at the moment, and the other 2 at the head of the field yet to pit, Pedersen and Lawrenson, that stay out. They are Australian rather than what they sound like, Swedish or Norwegian. And I do apologise, by the way, if we have slightly mispronounced your name in this broadcast. You are happy to correct us on the Discord and make sure we say it right next time, because ultimately we don't have a paddock that we can wander around in and chat to all of you guys to find out how we say your names. So Discord is our paddock, I suppose.
Yeah, that's one of the many things that you have to get used to when we're living in this virtual world and this lockdown environment, that there's not the level of interaction. You can't go and talk to drivers, understand a little bit about their story and the messages that they're getting across and how they got to where they got to. And that's doubly impacted in this SRO Asia series. There's a lot of new names that we've not been used to in more mainstream competitions, or competitions that we've become more familiar with as consumers and broadcasters as well. Great thing for some of these drivers to really get, as we've said before many a time, but it bears repeating, giving people the platform they wouldn't normally have. As Carl Pettersson now runs down pit road, be very, very careful to get it down to the speed limit. Yes, he does. Almost inch perfectly. His teammate as well, Lawrenson, comes down pit road. So these 2 cars are in direct competition with De Jesus in 9th. They were running 2nd and 3rd on track. De Jesus pitted 2 laps ago. We were looking at the driver now in the Mercedes AMG. Seems like it's a long way away, but it's carrying a great deal of speed through 130R, but almost flat to the floor. Be careful not to run too wide. 3 times, the 4th time you get a penalty. Breaking down into the final chicane, a little bit Mickey Mouse in comparison to some of the corners on this track. And now it is flat out for the run down to T1. Pettersson starting to leave pit road. These 2 are going to be separated by nothing. Ben, this is going to be fantastic to see.
I think, though, that our leader will be De Jesus, and indeed he is nicely clear of Pedersen. The 2 Laundry House cars come very close together out of pit lane. They are ahead of Rayton, though, so Rayton is the loser out of all of that, because I think Terry was ahead of at least one of his teammates, and now he is the 3rd of the 3 Laundry House cars. And actually, Rayton has a bit of attention from behind, because Ho is only half a second back and hasn't pitted yet, so don't really need to worry about him. But ultimately, Rayton has lost a little bit of pace, a little bit of position there. Pedersen is second behind De Jesus as the timing screen sorts itself out, and the gap is 4 seconds, with Lawrenson only a second back, and then Rayton 2 seconds after that. So actually, not only did the pit stop take longer, but they've lost a good chunk of time to De Jesus. That was a very good stop and good couple of out laps from De Jesus, who just did a 2 minutes 0.6. And remember, as we said, it was a very short stop, no chance to change tyres, no chance to refuel. So he is on part worn, part half full car, and yet still banging in lap times that most of the drivers out here probably couldn't match.
Yeah, when you're a man on form, the cards fall your way. And De Jesus is driving out of his skin at this moment in time. Fabulous, as you say, a really quick in lap, a couple of really fast out laps. So what we mean by that, the in lap is the lap before you come in for your pit stop. So you try and push, you attack the pit lane, you attack the pit entry and also the braking marker to get the car down to the mandated pit speed limit. And then you attack on cold tyres with lower tyre pressures. When you come out of pit road, try and get up to speed as quickly as possible. Something that Michael Schumacher in the early 1990s became a fine art for Schumacher, won him many a position and many a Grand Prix in his career. It's now become standard practice, but in sim racing, this also applies. The temperature of the tyres will affect the pressure of the tyres, which will affect the ride height of the car, the efficiency of the aerodynamics as well. And just like driving in wet conditions, pushing that little bit harder, finding grip where others can't find grip, and getting up to the target lap time quicker than your rivals, it's free lap time, Ben. And that's exactly what De Jesus has done. He has pushed harder, sooner than his rivals, and that has given him, as you say, probably a couple of seconds in his back pocket that he didn't have before we came down pit road. So fantastic performance there. But we've still got 24 minutes to go. The sun is slowly setting. It's 5:43 p.m. in game on the Suzuka International Grand Prix circuit. So it's still absolutely everything to play for.
So this is now our lead battle at the moment. I would suggest that Law and Long Lee should probably jump into the pits before Zheng, because they could easily do an undercut and get one lap clear without staring at the back of that Mercedes, which they've been doing for so long, being frustrated by being unable to get past. And you get the feeling that that BMW is certainly faster than the Mercedes ahead, but there is no track to do it. But at the moment, they're not pitting, so they must have a window that they need to meet to take that pit stop, and at the moment they can't get it. But every lap they're doing stuck behind Zen is going to push them further and further down the field. And I think, Stephen Bull is going to come out of all of this, the first man to pit, well inside the top 10. And I think these guys might actually struggle when they come back out onto circuit after their mandatory pit stop to be inside the top 10, because the pace that they're running is not as good as those further back.
Yeah, it's so frustrating sat in the comms box. It's really easy for us in the comfort of our own home, with a full picture ahead of us of what's happening, to comment on what's happening. But for me, it's so clear. Jump down pit road, you're being held up, you can't find an overtaking opportunity. There's nothing to lose by getting down that pit lane. But as a driver, you sometimes get tunnel vision. You see what's immediately in front of you and you almost forget about the bigger picture, and about, it's not the fact of overtaking this Mercedes that matters, it's getting across the start finish line, taking the checkered flag as quickly as possible. And if that means taking one on the chin and pitting earlier than you would initially want to do, and doing it now will get you to your goal faster than following the car ahead, that is exactly what you should do. For Yatlan Law, that we're driving on board with now in the purple BMW, not only has he got to find a way past, he gets sideways into the second part of Spoon, but really turns that to his advantage, gets the car turned in and on the throttle nice and early for the run down to 130R. But for this BMW, not only has he got to find a way past, which carries risk, he's also under pressure from King Long Lee behind, which also carries risk. The only sensible thing for me to is get down pit road, get that pit service done as soon as you possibly can. But it's great and easy for me to say that one. different story altogether when you're in the cockpit of the car, and they'll have a strategy that they're following, I am absolutely sure.
Yep, and Law still looking at the back of this Mercedes. Shirakawa, though, in the Ferrari has decided to pit, so this is a good indication of where this little group of cars might end up post-pit stop, and Shirakawa looking perhaps, as we were just saying, to do that undercut, to be able to get out back onto circuit with clear air, put in a couple of laps that are a bit faster than they were able to do stuck behind these three, and then hopefully leapfrog them when these three come into the pit lane. So keep an eye on Shirakawa in the Ferrari, 4th position, the only Ferrari in the top 23 that we can see. Also, Wong is in the pits in the Lexus in 9th spot, but really that 77 machine from Hong Kong, Team FSR, not really showing. Lots of curb taken by Law going into that particular corner there. A nice corner to throw your car over the curb, but that curb can throw you very viciously into the gravel. Surely he's got the opportunity to dive down the inside here. No, he hasn't. Interestingly now, though, there is a Lexus ahead. That is a car that is a lap down, and that, I believe, is going to get in the way of these three. And if it compromises Zheng in any way, Law is going to capitalise on it. And it's going to be running, it's not actually a Lexus, I think it's a Nissan. And it's not going to be running at the pace that these guys are trying to race at. So they are actually, their pace isn't bad. A 2:01.2, 2:01.3 at the last lap. So that does compare to Jesus, who's in doing about a second faster. So that gives you an idea just how much these fare. And just as we are about to see him getting caught up in traffic, we switch to the Audi of O'Hare. Andrew O'Hare from Australia for Ruse Racing, and he's in a good little battle too with Aslan just ahead. Aslan yet to pit, and now look, side by side, the BMW has the inside line. And did they need the traffic? They didn't even need the traffic. Something happened into the chicane there. BMW versus Mercedes power, and the BMW doesn't have it. Doesn't have an overlap, and Mercedes could turn in, but BMW stuffs it down the inside, and Law still takes the inside line through turn 2 and will get this done. And that has taken a huge amount of patience and a lot longer than it should have done. Long Li dived into the pits, and where is Shirakawa? In 10th position. So actually ahead of Stephen Bull, but only by a couple of seconds.
Now that is a great piece of awareness and great driving by Zhen and Law there. The Mercedes ahead of Zhen. Thought he had the line, thought he had the corner, saw the big BMW, which is, let's be fair, pretty difficult to miss. Coming up the inside, gave him racing room, didn't compromise his own line particularly badly, so still managed to keep a good level of speed through the corner, and that's beautiful racing. Love to see that kind of action, so massive congratulations to both drivers for the way they behaved there. And as you say, Shirakawa came out in 9th position, so he's ahead of Stephen Bull to the tune of about 12 seconds or so. So Shirakawa, the first of this little group to stop. Everybody else is reacting. It'll be very interesting to see how the remainder of those cars filter out once we've got to Law and Zhen down pit road. Ho as well, currently in 7th position, is the third of the non-stopped cars at the front of the field. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. It's not quite worked out for Stephen Bull as he would have hoped, although he's still very much inside the top 10. 10th on the road at the moment. That will likely increase a little bit further up the field as the rest of the stoppers do their business. But Andrew O'Hara in the brown and white number 23 Audi R8 under pressure from that colourful, shall we say, Aston Martin V8 Vantage I. Two beautiful sounding cars, two very different race cars as well. More so in the Aston, maybe looking at the inside of the hairpin. No, not quite close enough. Keeps a nice tight line. Wants to get on the throttle as early as he possibly can. Not take too much curb and set up the car on the exit of the hairpin. But it seems at this stage in the race that the Aston Martin's very much got the legs. Oh, sorry, the Audi's very much got the legs on the Aston.
Just having a quick look at Shirakawa's opening lap after the pit stop, very slow, and that means he's actually gone 3 seconds behind Long Li in 8th and 9th position. So, you know, you've got to get your in lap and your out lap absolutely bang on, and Shirakawa's given away a couple of seconds by not doing that. We still wait to see the final two of the group come into the pits with Law and Zheng. Actually, Zheng holding on to Law at the moment, just 0.4 of a second between the two of them, and obviously Law wanting to get the hammer down and try and do a bit of an undercut. 4 seconds separates De Jesus and Pedersen, who is really our ultimate leader of the race, and Lorenzen in 5th with Rayton in 6th. Rayton 6 seconds ahead of Ho, and actually 11 seconds ahead of Long Li and Shirakawa, and then 12 seconds between Shirakawa and Bull. That early pit stop strategy really hasn't worked out for those that managed to do it. They are well down the field as we watch the battle for 7th position. I say battle, it isn't actually a battle at all. It's Ho, who owes us a pit stop, trying to be passed by, is that a Honda? I think it is a Honda, isn't it? Of Philippa. And now she was one of our early stoppers. How on earth is she so far down the field? Because she was one of the very first people to come into the pits, but she's 36th. So I think she must have had a second pit stop, and unfortunately we're not seeing the best of our lady racer. And hopefully see her again when we become a series. I should kind of tell you when we're going to be able to follow the next round of this championship, as we've only got 15 minutes remaining of this particular race, this charity cup. If you want to donate, please go to SRO website, Twitter, Facebook, and donate some money to Save the Children, which is our chosen charity for this particular race.
What I will say is, as you say, a long way down, 36th position at the moment, but that was a fantastic overtaking manoeuvre to get herself unlapped against the Bentley. One way, then the other, got the switchback coming out of the hairpin, put the Bentley under pressure, compromised their corner exit, and then found a way past. And now she's running away from the chasing pack in the all-black Honda NSX. So a great bit of driving, and we've seen a lot of really good quality, close wheel-to-wheel combat from these drivers. This is the first race, as we've said before, we said in the Pro Racers broadcast just before this one. This is everybody's settling into this series and these cars and the racing against each other. So for a first time out, some of the racing has been fantastic. I am so excited about what this means for the championship that begins once this Charity Cup event is over. We've seen a real high quality of performance from these drivers. That bodes very, very well for the championship. But Zheng is a driver overtaken earlier on, as we saw, by Law in the BMW, is sticking to the back of that BMW very nicely indeed, following the lines, trying to learn a little bit of something, take some inspiration from the car, and of course the slipstream as well. We spoke about the size of the BMW. It's a big car. It pulls the Mercedes along, and Terry Rayton now in the laundry house. He's a man that's got shuffled back. He was the second of these 3 cars until the pit stop sequence put him back, but Terry seems to have the bit between the teeth. Now he's keen to get what will be 5th place on track, but theoretically could be 3rd place, once the pit stop cycles have worked their way through the system. So this is a pass for, potentially, Ben, a podium place.
Yeah, he was in that podium place before the stops, but ultimately just lost out in the pit stop cycle. He was one of the first to pit. Teammates Pedersen and Lorenzen came in a couple of laps later and were able to jump, or Lorenzen was able to jump Rayton. And at the moment, just 0.7 of a second separating them, but they're in equal cars. They'll probably have equal setups, and that'll be very, very hard to make that move stick. We were following for a while the 999 car of Sek Yin Ho, and in the Bentley, and he is about to become a bit of a cork because he's got Long Li and Shirakawa behind him, and Ho offers us a pit stop in that Bentley. He still needs to go into the pits, and what those two behind will not want is to get held up too much, knowing that they're actually racing the guys at the head of the field, Law and Zheng. And you're completely correct in saying that the pace of those two has gone up so much since Law got ahead of Zheng, but ultimately Zheng is still able to keep hold of the BMW and keep pace with it. So really kind of almost looks like he's settled his driving down, having now been second in line rather than leading the group. But the race really is between those two to get out of the pits ahead of Long Li and Shirakawa. And if they get stuck behind Ho, then that will really, really compromise them. So an interesting little quandary going on with only nearly 10 minutes remaining of this race. As I said before, this is the Charity Cup, and we have a 5-round championship for you, as we see Zheng in the 94 Mercedes driving out of China, and actually got some traffic to contend with as well. Looks like they've just got past a Bentley, but they've also got a Ferrari ahead. The first round of the championship will be in the first week in October. We're going to have Tuesday for Europe, Tuesday morning races, and for Asia, I think it works out Tuesday evening races for them. So Monza on October the 6th, a couple of weeks later, Laguna Seca at the end of October. November we'll go to Silverstone and Spa-Francorchamps on the 10th and 24th, and then the championship will end back here at Suzuka on the 8th of December. So they have huge amounts of time in between races to dial in their cars, set up their cars, practice, and that's going to really help our real-world drivers as well as some of these less experienced sim racers. And of course, there is a qualification in between each of them, so there will be a certain amount of pro racers that will be invited back each time, but then the field for this particular sim race will alter slightly every single time depending on who qualifies for the remaining spots. So really, really worth getting involved. Get onto SRO-esports.com, get yourself registered, get yourself Assetto Corsa Competizione. You need, you'll need a steering wheel and pedals, of course, because really this is a simulation. You can't drive it with anything else. And then see how your laps compare to some of these guys and the leaderboard that exists already. We're coming up to at the end of this race. Just a couple of drivers still owe us pit stops. I think it's only 3. First and second and 8th position. We're looking at 8th spot Sek Ying Ho in that Bentley privateer, and now King Long Li has passed him, but Shirakawa has yet to pass him, and that's good news for Long Li. That means he can get some laps in before those front 2 come into the stops.
Yeah, this is going to cost Shirakawa in the Ferrari now. We saw he was the first of the bunch of 4 that were fighting for track position. Shirakawa's been a little bit slower on pit exit, on his out laps, has not quite caught the speed, as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, not picked the speed up quite quick enough, and now he's got a car that's on a different pit stop strategy, that is not realistically racing for position, that naturally should fall a little bit further behind him in the running order, and Shirakawa's got to make a move. He's got to overtake into turn 1 to minimise the damage that this is causing his race. Meanwhile, the people that he was driving alongside on track that he was racing with before the pit stop strategies got involved have got clear track in front of him. Low and Sheng up front are continuing to put good laps on his. Shirakawa goes down the inside, leaves it very late. Will he run out of racetrack? Yes, he will, but he manages to keep the Ferrari just about on the grey stuff, runs all the way around the outside. That becomes the inside to the snake. The Bentley getting a little bit sideways behind as he tries to put the power down, and Shirakawa licked the stamp and sent it there, very much so. That was a very gutsy manoeuvre, and it's exactly what the Ferrari needed. Now he needs to settle down. Now he needs to ignore his mirrors. He needs to look through his dashboard and start chasing down King Long Li ahead, because these are a critical 8 minutes for his track position. He has got to put the laps of his life in that Ferrari if he wants to stand a chance of coming out in a good place when the front 2 cars stop for their mandatory pit stop.
But look at the gap. It was 1.1 seconds between Long Li and Shirakawa. It's now 2.6, so he's really lost time as we now flick our attention to the battle for 11th position. Diong, we've not spoken about too much. Andrew O'Hara and that amazing coloured Aston Martin of Sutamuto, as Zheng comes into the pits from 2nd position, but Law stays out. Zheng with now his pit stop. Where will he fall into line? Will it be in front of Long Li, which would be 6th position, or will it be behind Long Li and who he was fighting with before those earlier pitters? This is critical moments in the race for the Mercedes as we continue to watch Andrew O'Hara trying to get... Well, actually, he's in a sandwich of Aston Martins, isn't he? Because the 281 machine of Ryan Doong from Australia is also an Aston Martin, quite a nicely coloured Aston Martin. I quite like that colour. Not so sure about the one behind from Tsutomu, but pit stop has been completed from Zheng, and at the moment our timing graphic says he's in 4th position. I don't trust it. Let's go and have a look at Ying Zhen's track position and see exactly where he is. Side by side, Aston Martin, Tsutomu trying to get down the inside of the Audi. I think he's tried that move before and it hasn't worked out for him, but they're compromising their speed over Doing, who is driving away for them right now. Andrew O'Hara on the defensive this time, sitting in the middle of the road. Aston Martin to the outside, there is no way through. De Jesus, 2nd position now. Bit of traffic to contend with. He's got past those two pretty easily, a Lexus and a Nissan. Pedersen 4.4 back, Lawrenson 6.5 back from that, and that battle with Terry Rayton will go all the way down to the wire. We've got 6 minutes remaining, and I think Zheng has come out ahead of Longley and Shirakawa, so it's worked out for him, and that bodes well for Law when he makes his stop.
Yeah, that has surprised me a great amount. Zheng has come out in 6th place, about 5 seconds. That gap will reduce, of course, as Zheng gets back up to speed again, but 5 seconds to the good of King Long Lee, so that's worked out absolutely wonderful for the number 94 Mercedes-Benz, as Law now hits pit road in the BMW. So the race leader, or the race leader on the circuit, hits pit road. Jesus will move into his rightful position at the front of the grid. Peterson will join, as will Lawrenson and Rayton as well. So where does Law come out in comparison to Zheng, Longley and Shirakawa? These cars are separated by bigger gaps than when they went down pit road, but for Zheng, worked out an absolutely fabulous 6th on track, could well turn into 5th on the track, depending on how fast Law can get out of pit road and get his foot back down on the accelerator again. But tension in the last 4.5 minutes. All these cars fighting for track position. Andrew O'Hara, that we've been following for a while now in the Audi, chasing hard as we're looking at Takeru Nakagawa in the number 33 McLaren 720S, all over the back of a Lamborghini coming into the chicane. Not enough room for the McLaren yet, but it's hopefully going to get a clear run off the corner. The Lamborghini is fast in a straight line, but Ben fighting hard here.
Still fighting hard. Everywhere you look for position, and Andrew O'Hara this time on the attack rather than on the defence. It's put him wide. It's allowed Tsutomu to have a sniff up the inside, and they'll try and run side by side as they go through the S's, but they are advised against it and sensibly fall into line. But it's a good little battle, that, for 11th position. And I can tell you that Yayam Law came out in 5th position, 1.2 seconds only ahead of Zheng. So as it was, the overtake on track was the only passing move that worked out, and Long Lee, having put it earlier, it didn't work out for him because of traffic. 5 seconds now behind Zheng, and Shirakawa in 4th of that little group, but it is ultimately 8th position. So everyone is now pitted, apart from our Bentley friend in the 999. I'm not quite sure his plan because he's not got long left, but that will promote Stephen Bull up into 10th position. The man who pitted very, very early on in the race. There is our leader, though. ABS 3, traction control 8 on his satellite racing Mercedes. Over the line with a 4.5 second gap and 3 minutes remaining. So just a couple of laps to go.
Yeah, and look how controlled the car is now. So we're down into 2nd gear, which is a gear lower than you would normally do on a hot lap. Keeping the car nice and steady, not a hint of oversteer. Little lift on the throttle. Now you're going to be pinpoint precise here. Make sure you catch the curb on the inside of each section of the corner. Get one wrong, it will put you wrong for the entire segment. A little bit of control in the opposite lock. The tyres are starting to wear off, but the car looks stable. The car looks comfortable. Our race leader, put my teeth in. Our race leader has got absolutely everything under control, but a man that's got a red mist falling through his helmet at the moment is Terry Rayton in the second of these two Porsches, the number 91. He wants that podium place. He will feel hard done to. He got shuffled back, remember, due to pit stops. So Terry Rayton This is all about. This is not a championship. As he goes sideways there, good control. It's not a championship. There's no points. It's just honour. You can see his teammate. You can see the sister car. He knows Lawrenson. He knows how he drives. He knows how his car's set up and where it's strong and where it's weak. Terry Rayton wants this.
I love the fact that somebody's using the world's fastest gamer livery in the McLaren just behind there. That's really cool to see. As we moved into the 2020 season, the game was updated with the new liveries of all of these cars, and so if you don't run a custom livery, whoa, that's a big slide from Rayton. As he caught it, he has caught it, but that was a big moment for him, and that's actually put him into the clutches of, it's the 99 McLaren just behind of Piwanu, a Chinese driver, private, so therefore he doesn't have anyone to design a livery for him, but that is a beautiful livery. I love that Jenson Button Braun-esque livery that he's now using for his Rocket Sport team. Jenson did race actually in the SRO Esports, was it second round in the Pro Series, but ultimately a lot of the real world pro drivers like Jean-Eric Verne and Charles Leclerc also really struggles to really do anything in the virtual world. But now Rayton under pressure from this McLaren, who, and I mean, it's not even on, I don't know where it's been all race because it's not on the leaderboard, but it's obviously got really, really good pace at this moment in time and giving Terry a bit of hassle.
Yeah, that's going to frustrate Terry Rayton. He'll be annoyed with himself anyway that he's made a mistake and he's gapped, or so he's been gapped, should I say, by his teammate ahead. He'll not want that McLaren in his mirrors, bothering him, putting him off at the task in hand. There's not enough time on the clock to let the McLaren go and hopefully slow the car ahead when it comes to unlap himself from him. So he's got to put it out of his mind. He's got to focus on pure lap time. But I'm afraid, Ben, I'm fearing for Terry Rayton now that he's just not got enough time. But there are two lapped cars. They're about to come across, and there may be another late opportunity on this, I believe, the final lap of the race.
Yep, the timer has ticked down to 0, so the next time De Jesus sees the start-finishing line, the checkered flag will fall for him. And as you say, Rayton has just had the slide at the wrong moment, and I don't think it's going to be quite close enough. Although, as you say, those two cars ahead are having a fierce battle. Just not going to be enough track time, but Lawrenson's put wide by one of the back markers, and he's going to be compromised on exit. Terry Rayton is going to get a bit more of a run of things as the Lexus gets out of the way. Lots of flashing of lights. It doesn't work in sim racing in the same way it works in the real world. That Nissan is going to be in the way at the chicane. But let's go to De Jesus, who comes over the line. Joseph De Jesus to fourth. Gets himself a win in the Charity Cup in the sim version in his Mercedes for Satellite Racing. And Carl Pedersen over the line in the Laundry House for second. But what about the battle between the two Porsches? Rayton over the line in fourth behind his teammate Lawrenson. I think they got caught up by that Lexus and Nissan at the end. And it's side by side between Law and Zheng for fifth. And just holding on is the BMW by 0.01 of a second. That was incredibly close. Still lots of battling going on. Still Andrew O'Hare is desperate to get past the Aston Martin of Doing. But this is the last opportunity for him, and he's not close enough. And unless there's a mistake on exit from the Aston Martin, there will be no more chances for the Audi. And he's been fighting hard. It would have been incredibly good fun for Ryan de Jong and for the rest of them, but no chance. Nakagawa over the line in 16th in the first of the McLarens. A nice little battle going on there as well. Here is Luis Moreno in the Nissan. 25th position for him. So Lappery was down to 31st. That was Kimura, who we saw being lapped to the end of the race. And Philippa Bokida, unfortunately, 32nd in her Honda. Can't wait to see her race again because she's obviously got some serious pace. The other lady racer, by the way, Mia Rose, has just come across the line in 15th in her Lamborghini. So I hope to see slightly better performance from that. Not quite sure why Nakib has decided to park it on the front straight away. But there is confirmation of the result then. 5 seconds to the good. Joseph De Jesus over Pedersen, Lawrenson and Terry Rayton. A massive fight to the end of the race between Law and Zheng, Long Li and Shirakawa. Early stopping Stephen Bull in 9th. Then De Jong, O'Hara and Sutamuto, your top 12. And then the rest of our challengers who managed to keep on the lead lap. And what a race, Paul.
Yeah, fantastic race, Ben. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great performance from the entirety of the field. We saw some great fighting. We've seen some respect as well, which I like to see in a virtual race. We've seen drivers giving space to each other, willing to race side by side. At one point, up to 13 OR, we were going to have 3 wide coming into the corner. So just an absolutely fabulous showcase for a great event as well. This is a charity cup. So to remind everybody at home, please do go over to the various different media for SRO. Donate if you can. Every penny counts, and it'll be wonderful to see if we can bring some good funding towards a wonderful cause, Ben, and a great race as well.
And really, really cool to see, especially in this sim race, so many new names to the high-end, high-profile events that we have. Because I think perhaps because of time zones, we don't necessarily get the chance to see the best in Australia racing the best in Europe, because simply it's very hard to host a race at the right time. But now we're getting a chance to really see how good those guys are over there.
Yeah, and that is exactly right. And also, while we're doing the whole praise and grumble piece, congratulations to the event organisers, AK Informatica. This is, as we mentioned at the very, very beginning of this broadcast, we've got quite literally a spread of people engaged in this competition all over the world. And the ping on the server has been great. Everybody's been able to race clean. The pictures that Ben and I are seeing to commentate over the top of have been crystal clear. So, yeah, serious congratulations to all concerned, the drivers, the competitors, the organisers, the charity. It's been a wonderful opening to what I hope, Ben, is going to be a just and equally as good championship for the next couple of months.
And what do you think about this addition of a pit stop in the race? Because it's not something we saw with the SRO Esports competition back across the summer, but it adds something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm a fan of endurance racing. I'm a fan of strategy as well. And we saw it with Stephen Bull, I think it was, one of the early stoppers. Fascinating to see how he and his group of 10 or so cars that stopped at the beginning managed to work their way through the field. And okay, on this occasion, it didn't work out. But the beauty of GT3 racing, each track will suit a car differently, will suit a strategy differently. Somewhere like Laguna Seca, you pit first, you're hardly likely to be a lap down by the time you get out of the pits. So that is going to be a real talking point, I think. And yet something that's thoroughly enjoyed. And from my point of view, Ben, were you surprised at the level of the quality? Because a lot of these drivers we don't know the names of.
No, I wasn't surprised because, ultimately, perhaps in Europe, we're a little short-sighted about talent from the rest of the world. Yeah. What's fantastic to see is so many different countries able to participate, being represented. Obviously, you've got, especially in the sim competition, a lot of Australians and people and countries that are kind of well-versed in motorsport, but then so fantastic to see countries represented that perhaps don't have so much knowledge of motorsport, and yet there are people who have bought Assetto Corsa Competizione, the game, which has given them an awareness of SRO esports and an awareness of SRO as a GT3 category, whether it be virtual or real. And ultimately it connects with drivers who ultimately become fans, and whether they are elder and therefore could afford to buy one of these GT3 cars for the road, or they're younger and they aspire to buy a Mercedes or a Nissan or a Ferrari in the future. There's just so many potential. So it's really, really cool to basically educate the world in GT3 racing and SRO racing, and then for them to educate us in their names, I suppose.
Yep, and I think we live in a wonderful world where world motorsport, through the financial marketplaces of the world and the health situation, world motorsport is in a difficult time, and there's new forms of propulsion. There's electric racing out there. Hydrogen is in the background a little bit as well. Manufacturers are tightening their purse strings. But out of all these difficulties, GT3 racing, and in particular the SRO Series of Championships, so the GT World Challenge, continues to go from strength to strength. Where else in the world can you see a finely balanced mix of professional, highly talented amateur drivers and still talented paid drivers as well, racing the likes of Lamborghini, Ferrari, Bentley, Audi, BMW, Lexus, Honda, Nissan? We've got a richness in variety, stunning racetracks. These series go to places like Suzuka, like Laguna Seca, some of the finest tracks in the world. And to have that represented in virtual form, and then to allow people who don't have the funding to go race in the real world to still be on a world stage, to still be in front of an audience in a professional broadcast scenario, racing incredibly close. Don't get me wrong, you know this, Ben, already, and some of the folks watching at home might not. Just because it's esport racing, it's no different to real racing. When you're fighting tooth and nail, the feeling is identical. And I think it's wonderful that we live in a world where this can happen. It's such a good news story.
Let's also not forget that whilst this simulates the SRO GT3 category, they've also introduced recently the GT4 category of cars. So now you're able to do multi-class racing, or if you can't cope with the speed and performance of a GT3 car, you can train yourself with a GT4. And you also have many more tracks that we get to see on these esports races. There's places like Mugello, Misano, and Brands Hatch, and all kinds of races. So really, really cool to see. Now, I think we have a guest with us, Charles Teresa, I think I heard. Yeah, there we go. Over here.
Hi.
Charles,
Hi.
You kind of had a bit of a starring role there, because you were the first of the drivers to pit very early on, but unfortunately then you had to pit for a second time.
Yeah, my server disconnected at the start, so I had some technical issues, which means I couldn't join the grid, which is a shame. We had a really good setup, but in the end, yeah, we had to pit again in the middle of the race, which cost us more time. But yeah, it's quite fun battling through the field, coming back through. So could do better.
What does this competition and this championship mean to you and your fellow racers for the Asian scene of motorsport?
Yeah, I think it's a really good platform for all us Asian sim drivers. It hasn't been anything as big scale as this before, and for SRO to come in and do such a great job at it first time out, I think it sets a really good precedent for the future for us.
So you're looking forward to getting involved in the full championship and being able to actually earn points and make sure you get the car set up correctly, choose the right vehicle for each track. There's so much that goes into it, right?
Oh yeah, there's so much work behind the scenes that our engineers go to great lengths and try and help us drivers. And yeah, I'll be racing for Craft Bamboo Racing in the Mercedes AMG GT3 for the whole season. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
And how does that relate to the real world drivers? Because they have a huge entry into the real world series. Are you their secret weapon, helping all of those real world drivers out to make sure their performance is as good as possible, as well as yours?
It's not just me. Our engineer Duarte and all the other drivers' input as well has made a big difference. Yeah, we definitely work together as a team, and hopefully we fight at the front in both categories.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really cool to be able to chat to one of our drivers in the recent real and virtual races, and some serious work to do. And this is what I love, Paul, about what we've seen recently. The real world famous racing drivers that we know and love turning to the sim world, turning to drivers like Charles and saying, hey, help me out. I need you to make me faster. I need you to make me better. Enzo Benito, for instance, helping Charles Leclerc out for the virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans and for the SRO Esports event that we put on. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think that is incredible how things have turned on their head over the last 2 or 3 years, and how sim racing and esport is now really accepted. And I think something that Charles said that I picked up on that was really, really fascinating. They've got the Craft Bamboo engineer helping their team of drivers to maximize their car. So this is not, again, for people at home that forgive me if you already know this, the level of seriousness that these teams and drivers are taking this. Craft Bamboo have got their real drivers, their sim racers that they've picked out that are the best of the best, and their engineer maximizing the performance, the time that's gone into it to get a result. This means something to all these teams and drivers. It's not just a turn up and represent and go home again. This is a full-blooded championship and a full-blooded attack on the series, and I think that's fantastic to see.
It's a great way for all of our Asian competitors to get their teeth into a championship whilst they wait to get back onto the real circuit. Thank you so much for joining us for this Charity Cup. Paul, you've been a fantastic co-host. Thank you very much for stepping in. And to all of you guys at home, thank you very much for watching. David Addison will be back with us for the start of the championship, which kicks off at the start of October. October the 6th is the first round, and then every couple of weeks all the way through to December the 8th. Lots of practice for our real world drivers to do, which I'm sure they will be getting their head down now that they've experienced. Please go and donate as well at Save the Children across our SRO platforms. My name has been Ben Constanduros. Thank you so much to SRO, to AK Informatica, and of course to ACC, the platform, and to all of the drivers and to you at home for watching. Until next time, goodbye.